OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Hello, good morning to you. Welcome along. It is Thursday morning. Am I right, Owen? Is it Thursday morning? Yes, it is. The 11th. Is that correct? Tell me I'm right. Go on.
I don't know. I just don't know. Have you got that Thursday feeling? That's probably the only way to decipher whether or not it's Thursday.
Yeah. I mean, there are certain bellwethers of the week, and then you move the day that we do the quiz, and I was like, well, that's no good. I mean, that used to be a very important part of the week for me, where I would go, okay, we're heading towards the end. We're nearly there, over the hump, nearly finished, nearly done. Matches are imminent, but I mean, there's a match every night now, of some sort. And last night's was fairly spectacular. A 5-4 win for Everton against Jose Mourinho. This is the most un-Jose Mourinho match that we're ever going to see or hear from, or... Well, actually, I suppose there's a lot of stuff coming out afterwards that is very Jose Mourinho-esque, but the magic of the cup is back, baby.
In 2004, Jose Mourinho said 5-4 is a hockey score, it's not a football score, it's disgraceful. 5-4 is the full-time score. Well, after extra time, in fairness, last night, so I'm sure Jose Mourinho would accept that if you give an extra few minutes, it maybe is less of a hockey score. I think it's only the third time. If you look at Richard Jolly, one of the great statsmen, that this is that he's actually conceded 5 goals in a game, which is remarkable. I think Barcelona did 5 against him. I think when he was Chelsea manager, Spurs did 5 against him. And Bernard and Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin's Everton are the third team to put 5 past the Jose Mourinho team.
So who was the second? Sorry, I was often in reverie about that Barcelona-Real Madrid game. That's one of the greatest games I've ever seen. It's very hard for an absolute mullering to be a great game, but that was like peak of the greatest Barcelona team, absolutely annihilating them and just playing this beautiful football.
I was actually, without going on a tangent, I was actually kind of looking back on that a little bit yesterday, just because it is Pep against Jose this weekend, and obviously that was peak Pep Jose rivalry, wasn't it, in the league at that point, when we thought that we had copied and pasted that rivalry from Spain to the Premier League, and we thought this is going to be this amazing thing where Manchester United and Manchester City were going to go toe to toe, and we'd have all these amazing storylines, and it just never happened. Jose versus Pep has been the second chapter of them being in the same league. Is surely one of the most disappointing things we have in modern sport. But anyway, the other one was Tottenham 5, Chelsea 3 on the 1st of January 2015. Andros Townsend and Nasser Chadli were on the scoreline. So not quite that Barcelona team's level. Danny Rose also scored, and Harry Kane scored twice. 5-3, Costa, Hazard and John Terry with the goals for Chelsea on that occasion.
Okay, so look, that was that. We'll talk a little bit more about Seamus Coleman, who played in the game, and also Matt Doherty, who got the start. Doherty's been the subject of conversation from Mourinho this week, talking about his slow start to life at Spurs. The fact that he got picked last night in a game when they end up losing 5-4, I don't know if that's actually a good thing. Maybe you don't want to be starting the cup games, although the cups are hugely important for Mourinho because there's a chance of a trophy. So it was a big thing. So maybe it's a good sign. I don't know. Phil will try and interpret that for us a little bit later on as well. When we get to that, there's loads more for us to talk about this morning. 0879 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us, and we'd love to hear from you, particularly if you're involved in GAA, because it emerged late last night that the GAA have communicated that it'll be Easter before inter-county training can resume at the very earliest, which prompted a lot of people going, when is Easter exactly? What does that mean? What is that March? Is it a late Easter? I don't know. Then, when does the Lord rise again? I mean, I don't know. Is it something that everybody always knows automatically, the day that's Good Friday? Is it because everybody marked it off in their calendar at the start of the year? Geez, I can go back on the fags or the booze or whatever it is. Is that how everybody knows what Easter is automatically? Is there just an internal clock that you people have? Is there?
I'm sure you're talking to people at home generally rather than you.
People, do you not know?
Me, specifically. I would probably.
You're a holy man, Owen, aren't you?
I would probably know on any other year, to be honest, because it's bank holiday, and you got to plan your life around bank holidays.
Okay, yeah, and you
remember when that was a thing, when Mondays being off were actually an exciting thing to look. Remember when exciting things existed, and happiness was a thing. Sunday the 4th of April is Easter Sunday. That is when the Lord shall rise. COVID pending.
Right. Okay, so nothing's happening before the 4th of April. That was the news that came through yesterday. And all of a sudden, that shortens the amount of time that you can play matches, because they've committed to giving the inter-county setups a full month of training before they would start matches. Now, that was the old world, so new information came to light. We can change things if we want to. I think it would be their take if they decided to go with the inter-county season first. Immediately, everybody jumped into like, oh, well, this means automatically that the club season is going to go first. And the club's going to have the pitch cleared for them the way they did last year, and we get to keep what we had last year. And I don't necessarily know if that's automatically going to be true. I'm not sure. I don't know what's going to happen here. I think that's the big thing, is that we have a lot of unknowns, but we are asking people about what they think should happen in terms of GAA. So we asked last night, what should be played first in the 2021 GAA calendar? County 39%, club season 61%, and loads of people have been getting in touch. Now that was on Tommy's Instagram, who obviously has more club GAA followers than inter-county. Niall Rowe on Instagram says, club, it means more players over the country can play, which is what people need after a long lockdown. Club first, same as last year. Forget county, just play club county, but forget the league, do championship as planned and give clubs the remainder of the year. I guess there's a lot of sense in playing the club first, Owen, because everybody gets to play, and so it's this great release of pent-up energy and anxiety, and it's very grassroots and it's local, and you know, maybe you could divide counties in two, so you only play within a 15, 20, 30 mile radius, and there's not people traversing up and down the length and breadth of the country and buses for inter-county games. Plus then you hope that by the end of the year there is enough vaccination done to allow some semblance of normality in stadiums. Maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 20%, maybe it's 50%. Who knows? Maybe there's an All-Ireland final on Halloween and everybody's at the game wearing masks but vaccinated because everybody's had their first shot, and we're all like, wow, what a year this was. The club scene happened, the inter-county season happened, and then you can go back and have your Leinster or provincial club championship, and the All-Ireland club runs into next January, February, and that's all right, is it? Is there? I guess I'm asking, there's loads of ways to make this work.
There is. The one thing I would say about that is, if we're in a situation in Easter where it's still touch and go about whether or not the GAA can come back, bringing back the inter-county players is going to be an easier task. There's more resources around them to ensure that they stay safe, and there's less of them. That's it, really. I mean, bringing back more players is what you don't want to be doing. To be honest with you, I'm surprised this has happened. I'm surprised that inter-county GAA has been downgraded from elite status, essentially, under these circumstances, and I'm surprised it's been pushed back as far as Easter, which is the start of April. We need to stop saying Easter, say the start of April, because Easter is such a confusing thing. But I wouldn't have been surprised if they'd said March. We're going to put everything back, but March is when you can start. Not only just because that's when this current lockdown is due to be extended, because it's not going to end then, it's going to be extended at that point, but because there will be a conversation at that point. There will be a number of different people coming to the fore explaining exactly what their plan is for the next little while. And also, that is next month. That is still a good bit away, the 5th of March, I think it is. But I'm surprised that they put it back 2 months. A lot can happen in 2 months, is my point. This time 2 months ago, everybody was sitting in pubs, having their substantial meals, and everybody was...
what a great idea that was.
What a brilliant idea that we've ever seen. So a lot of things are going to happen in 2 months, and I just wonder if in the middle of March we're going to be saying to ourselves, God, could inter-county players have actually been edging towards a return at this point? Maybe I'm wrong, and it's clear nobody needs to come on this morning and explain why they've done this. It's obvious why they've done this, and clearly there's a good chance it's not the wrong decision, and you're better safe than sorry without question. But I'm just a little bit surprised that they've gone to full hog and they've gone for 2 months. Yeah,
I think they've obviously been told that everything's going to be extended quite far, and that this is part of preparing the whole country for the fact that lockdown will be continuing as far as it's going to continue. Some suggestion that there's going to be a graduated return to schooling in the 3 weeks after the midterm break. Midterm break is next week, and then you'll start to see some graduated return for secondary school students. It'll be interesting to see if that happens, and that's far more important, obviously, because once that happens, there will again be a sense of some kind of normality returning. And if that works and the figures don't go wild, well, then you can start looking at stuff like opening sports clubs and allowing teams to train. So we'll wait and see. We're going to hear from Alan Milton a little bit later on the show as well. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number if you've got a view on that. We'd love to hear from you this morning. You can vote in our polls as well, running on Twitter and on Instagram. A reminder, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Phil Egan is with us. Phil, good morning to you.
How you doing, lads?
I want to play you this, right? This is Dermot Gallagher speaking on off the ball last night to Joe. I think everybody knew that Dermot Gallagher was from a good Ringsend Gallagher family. He's obviously been living in England for quite a while, and he's a media star now, but not everybody had heard him sound like this. Have a listen.
I had to start work, so I got work in England.
Wow. Different times. What did you start work at 16?
A newspaper printer. It was quite ironic. I was on the keyboards. I used to do all the typing for the newspapers, and I was quite good at it, actually, because I got such tiny hands, so I was quite quick. But I'm glad that didn't last very long.
I didn't realise, maybe everybody did all those years watching you, I guess I was that bit younger in your Premier League days. I didn't realise the Irish accent had survived this much.
Well, it's because I'm talking to Irish people. My best mate, Alan Wiley, gives me no end of stick because I have to crank it down a bit with English people. And it was quite ironic when my dad was alive, God bless him. One of my friends said to me, why do you talk Irish to your dad and you talk English to us? And I went, I don't. I was thinking they meant Gaelic, you see. And they went, no, your accent changes. I said, well, you wouldn't understand me. And they don't. When I first started on Sky TV, they were very, very conscious of certain words I couldn't pronounce. And I had to, watch the BBC News to try and... words with TH in it I found very, very difficult, so I'd have to practice. I'd be dreading them say, was it a Thursday match and whatever, and they were trying to explain to me there was a H in the word Thursday and it wasn't TURS.
That's obviously gone viral on our Twitter feed. People correcting his English. I'm not a big fan of that. I think he should continue to call it Thursday anyway. Phil, how are you?
Yeah, ref watch will never be the same again.
No, I mean, I think he should. There's now a period where he should just come out and be himself.
Yeah. Next time he's asked a question on ref watch, he should come up with some Irish terms, just to really show his Irishness. But it was I actually listened to the interview in full on the way into the office this morning. It's really interesting, just the enthusiasm he has for football, because he talks about how he got into refereeing. It's because he wanted to be a footballer. Obviously, he said himself he wasn't good enough. But listening to him talk about being on the pitch for a Champions League semi-final first leg, Juventus in Turin, watching Zidane play, and just talking about getting stick off players as well. But definitely worth checking out. And after you get over the shock of the first few minutes where you realise that Dermot Gallagher has gone, the full Irish, that this is not the accent you usually hear on Sky, then you'll really enjoy it.
What people don't realise, Phil, is that you also tone your accent down drastically for all the cultures in Today FM. And when you come off air, you got this big, thick dub accent. We should bring that to the people this morning.
I've been told I have a bit of a hybrid accent because obviously my dad is from the Midlands, my mum is from Donegal, but she's never had a Donegal accent because she's from Ballyshannon, and some people in Donegal would say, is that really part of Donegal? It's very close to Sligo.
Shots fired on all those Ballyshannon people.
That is not what I'm saying. I've been on a bus going from Ballyshannon to Donegal town. I see the way people from other parts of Donegal look at the Ballyshannon people.
I mean, they don't speak very highly of Ballyshannon. It's fair to say the rest of Donegal, they look down on it like Shelbyville. Let's just leave it at that. And because we've all got to drive through Ballyshannon to get to Donegal. So let's move on, Phil. I can't believe you walked us down very dangerous territory there. That's bad country.
Well, look, by the way, it's a lovely part of the country. I spent on my every summer there. But a Donegal man did feature for Everton last night. Seamus Coleman, as some game last night at Goodison Park. I know you were talking there about the GAA not being able to get back underway. I don't know what I'd do if there's no football on at the moment, because there's very little else to do. But last night's game was an absolute cracker. A 5-4 win for Everton after extra time. Not really something you associate with Jose Mourinho teams conceding 5 goals. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how defensive he goes against Manchester City this weekend. But Seamus Coleman did come off the bench in that game, but it was Bernard that scored the winner for the Toffees and Matt Doherty obviously played for Spurs. Gareth Bale wasn't involved, and he obviously wasn't involved at the weekend, but Jose Mourinho didn't really hold back on what he said after the game about Bale. He just said, I'm not convinced that he's injured, because how can you pick up an injury when he didn't play at the weekend? So it's fair to say the Gareth Bale project, the return to Spurs, hasn't gone very well.
No, it's been an expensive flop so far.
Yeah. And, you know, we obviously would talk about transfers a lot, and this was a story that came up a lot with Gareth Bale maybe going to Manchester United on loan. And I think at the time we were very much thinking, don't do this if you're Manchester United, because this is a guy that hasn't played much football over the last few years. So it's a risk. And I mean, he's barely kicked the ball. His highlight reel since he's come back to Spurs, it's not going to be very long.
Is there a possibility that they sign him next year? There's not really at this point. And is there a possibility that Gareth Bale is out of football next season?
To know, it's a tough one to watch, because maybe he's fallen out of love with football. We don't know. You know, the last couple of years, maybe they've taken its toll on him in terms of his love for the game, the injuries, his confidence is shot. But also as well, the only way you're going to get back to your best or somewhere near that level is by playing games, and he's just not getting a look in. Even if he was fully fit, Jose Mourinho doesn't obviously see a role for him at the moment.
Yeah. All right. What else is going on?
Well, the other games last night, obviously Manchester City won 3-1 away to Swansea. Very comfortable win for them, but it's 15 wins in a row in all competitions, which is a new record for an English top flight club, and nobody just looks like laying a glove on them at the moment. I'm starting to wonder, could they actually win the Champions League this season? I'm trying to find ways that they don't actually get it done, but we've seen in the past that they haven't been able to get over the line with Pep Guardiola even in charge. Billy Sharp scored a penalty to give Sheffield United a 1-0 win away to 10-man Bristol City. Kelechi Iheanacho scored an injury time to give Leicester a 1-0 win at home to Brighton. The draw for the sixth round will be made tonight. It'll be made after the Wolves and Southampton game, which gets underway at 5:30. There's also the meeting of Championship side Barnsley and Chelsea from 8 o'clock. As you mentioned there, GAA say no decisions have been made regarding the fixture calendar after the latest delay to return to play. So that's after discussions with the government, and it was decided inter-county games would not be permitted under level 5 restrictions. So no training either, and we're talking till at least Easter at the earliest. In tennis, defending champion Sophia Kenin is out of the Australian Open. She was beaten in the second round by Kaya Kanepi. World number 1 Ashley Barty is into round 3. Elina Svitolina, the 5th seed, will take on American teenager Coco Gauff later on. Rafa Nadal also in action later on as well. It's been reported the president of the Tokyo Olympic Organising Committee will resign after a sexist remark he made about something he said about women talking too much at a board meeting earlier this month. This is Yoshiro Mori. So news outlets in Japan say that he is going to resign. And on the back of plenty of the papers this morning, I know it's something you're going to be talking about very shortly, but Johnny Sexton says he's on track to face France on Sunday. He insists he won't take any risks to his own health in order to play. And this is after he came off with a head injury against Wales last Sunday. Obviously, a neurologist in France had something to say about this. He claimed that Sexton suffered 30 concussions, but Dr. Jean-Francois Charman has apologised for those comments. He said he should never have cited this figure without any explanation, and he says he regrets the wrong that he has done to the player, who was a patient of his and who he has more respect for than anyone.
All right, interesting stuff from Barry O'Driscoll in the Irish Times this morning. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. Here's what's coming up on the show between now. Thanks, Phil. Here's what's coming up on the show between now and 10 o'clock. You get more from Phil, by the way, on otbsports.com. Tomás O'Leary is standing by. We'll talk to him in just a moment. Bring you through the sports pages, talking about the Australian Open with Colm Boohig at 8:20. John Duggan is back, the great Cornholio, at 8:35. Philippe Auclair is going to talk to us about Paris Saint-Germain, how Pochettino is getting on. Our Cheltenham watch with Thom Malone, 9:05. Our TV picks with Sue Murphy at 9:20. And Keith Wood and Niamh Briggs at 9:35 this morning. Great analysis from Niamh Briggs on the show last night. It's 7:50 this morning. I want to bring you some of the comments that we've been getting through. We are running a poll on the OTB AM Twitter account. That's at OffTheBallAM. What should happen first to the GAA calendar in 2021? Club or county first? And we're running that poll. Run them both at the same time, says Ian Fitzsimons, which is wild, so wild that it might just be one of those genius ideas that we never actually consider properly. County first because it's safer to regulate and control, and clubs have been the source of multiple outbreaks, says Jack. Brian Kennett says county should be called off for the year, get the clubs open first, communities need it. Kerry GAA fan page says county first, I don't want to be watching another winter football championship for the second year in a row. Oisin Neal, the Armagh footballer, says club won't be allowed until about level 2, which looks like summer, so it will have to be county first, which I think is one of those points that we probably needed to consider a bit more. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. You can WhatsApp us 087 9180 180.
All right, we are turning our attention to the weekend's rugby. Ireland against France in the second round of the Six Nations in Dublin on Sunday, and we're delighted to be joined by former Ireland scrum half Tomás O'Leary. Tomás, how are you getting on?
Good, thanks, lads. Good to be with you.
So we were thinking the other day about 2009 and how the France win in Croke Park kick-started the Grand Slam that year, but how it was also this Ireland win in the middle of this sea of French dominance. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you remember going into that game, about how it was, I think 2003 maybe, the last time Ireland had actually got over the line and beaten France?
Yeah, look, I guess it was my first proper season into the Six Nations squad. I got my first cap in 2007 under Eddie O'Sullivan, but hadn't really featured. So obviously going into that Six Nations, it was kind of all new to me anyway. So that kind of ambivalence of youth and inexperience probably meant that I wasn't really too weighed down by any kind of the history of it. And there was a few young fellas after coming in as well, like look, Jamie Heaslip had a few more caps than me, obviously, Tommy Bowe, these guys, Luke Fitzgerald. So I think those guys probably didn't have that weight of history. Obviously the likes of Tricko, Paulie, all these guys, yeah, they had maybe been beaten by France for the previous few years, but all these guys had beaten France too. So I think going into the game, we kind of believed that we would win the game. So history really wasn't a factor.
That game is kind of under-remembered a little bit, sorry, Owen, because it was one of the greatest performances that we've ever had. We scored these amazing tries, and it was like, because it's the start of the tournament and we end up winning with the drop goal. It's always the drop goal that gets replayed, but maybe we should spend a bit more time looking back on just that match. What do you remember about the game itself?
Yeah, similar to you. Up until I knew I was coming on the show yesterday, very little. So I literally got to Google the starting lineups and actually then saw there was a clip on YouTube on it. So I watched that. So that obviously brought back the memories, and they start kind of vividly coming back then. So obviously the Jamie Heaslip try obviously stands out in the first half. You know, we've got a line out, I think, in our half, maybe on our own kind of 40 yards from our own line, and played it wide. I think Tommy Bowe made a bit of yardage up the left-hand side of the pitch into their half. I've got the ball and missed past to Paulie. He kind of did a swivel. I kind of put it behind him, which wasn't unusual for me. And he threw a pass to Heaslip then. And Heaslip beat 2 or 3 men with his feet to go under the sticks, like so. And I suppose looking at it then, even on YouTube, you know, the crowd went mad. So that's the kind of thing you miss at the moment with the crowd and the influence of the crowd, and I suppose that buzz and that pickup that we got from the crowd that day. So that was probably a standout moment of the game.
It's interesting that you talk about the positive energy that was around the camp that year. I guess the change of coach, the fresh blood, and I guess that beautiful ignorance to what France had done to Ireland in the previous couple of years, not knowing what it was like to lose to France, was surely a positive for you and for the other new players in the squad that season.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I suppose previously, obviously 2006, 2008 for Munster, my own personal experiences, we'd beaten Biarritz in a final and beaten Toulouse in a final. So I hadn't that experience of losing to the team. And look, I flicked through their team last night. Obviously, you had, you know, like the Pochettino at 15, Medard was 14, you Josie on in the centre, you Boxis at 10, but like the pack was Harry Nardiki, Dusatoir, Cheval, Nallet. So like they were littered with top class internationals at the time. But like you said, I suppose that freshness and that ambivalence and lack of experience that maybe one or two of us had maybe helped the other lads a little bit as well.
Yeah, like for the thing that sometimes I think gets forgotten about that game is how good France were at times in the first half, I think. I mean, if you were looking through it on YouTube yesterday, Tomás, you might be able to explain just how slick they were in that opening 40 minutes.
Yeah, look, there was times we were chasing shadows, and looking back on it now, there was times, you know, I was obviously doing a lot of cover defence and trying to cover if there was line breaks. They made a couple of line breaks. out of nothing, and I think they had a pretty flowing move as well from their own half, a line break, which ended with, I think it was Ger and Eoin scoring in the left corner. And that put us, I think it was 4 or 6 points down at that stage, and a couple of Rog penalties kept us in the game in the first half, really, until Jamie scored that try, kind of maybe, I don't know what it was, 35 minutes into the first half. But yeah, like we were kind of chasing shadows at certain stages of the first half, but I think our kind of scramble defence under Les Kiss at the time was really good. So yeah, that first half we were definitely under pressure. But I think our tries came at pretty opportune times.
I've just watched our Nordic try after 13 minutes. They're like the Barbarians. It's amazing. France were unbelievable.
Yeah, they were handy enough, all right. So like you said, even I had forgotten kind of the significance, or I suppose the achievement of beating them and beating a side of that calibre, I guess. So yeah, you're right. The rest of the Six Nations and obviously the last game probably ends up getting a lot of the limelight. But it was, looking back at it last night, was pretty cool.
It's Croker as well, obviously. That's the other thing. It's like the stadium looks unbelievable.
Yeah, look, unbelievable experience to play in Croke Park. Obviously, I kind of grew up wanting to play there and try and emulate my old fella and play there in the Red of Munster, or Red of Cork. Never managed to do it senior, but luckily did it minor, and then obviously to play international rugby there was unbelievable. So sorry lads, I've got a little man here.
No, you're grand. It's happening to everybody.
Yeah, look, it was a privilege to play there, definitely. And look, 82,000 Irish fans packed in to Croke Park, and you know, it was unbelievable to experience that.
That point you make about the injection of youth into the side, I'd kind of forgotten. I think Heaslip obviously had felt like he had something to prove because he'd been left out of the World Cup squad famously by Eddie O'Sullivan, and I think Tommy Bowe as well. It helps to have an injection of youth into the team. That whatever that generation is, like, which we're kind of lacking a little bit at the moment. It's a very similar team that we have right now to the team that didn't succeed at the World Cup, and by their own standards look back on the World Cup as a failure. Maybe we just need to bite the bullet and inject 3 or 4 new players into the team, into the starting team in particular.
Yeah, look, you could say, like, yeah, there's an argument for that, definitely. I suppose there's no one really, I suppose, jumping out. Look, I suppose he's trying it maybe with Casey to an extent. You know, on the pad, like, he hasn't played any, starting even the Heineken Cup game. Obviously, you know, you've Harry Byrne, then there's a lot of talk about him. I haven't seen enough of him to play, but he's highly rated. Like, so do you just, you know, pick 1 or 2 of them for a couple of games in the Six Nations and see how they go? Yeah, there's an argument for that, definitely. Similar, like the likes of Coombs down in Munster, you just catapult them straight in. But I think you kind of have to earn it too. And like you talk about all those guys like Tommy Bowe, obviously Heaslip, these guys, they were playing for their province and they were starting Heineken Cup games and winning Heineken Cups. But Munster in that case, obviously Leinster went on to win a hell of a lot too. So I think you kind of have to earn your stripes to an extent too at provincial rugby. And obviously the lack of a Heineken Cup is handicapping Andy Farrell in that scenario, whereby he doesn't get to see maybe the younger guys, tested in a full metal environment. Obviously, there still is a big step up from European rugby to Test rugby.
Just one last one on 2009 then, Tomás. This is at the very start of a campaign. I think if you look at the campaigns 6 years either side of this, you probably have a situation where France always brought the table down at least on a Grand Slam. There was never going to be the possibility of a Grand Slam because France existed. So surely after that first game, beating France for the first time since 2003, you were looking around the dressing room thinking, God, this thing might actually happen.
Yeah, exactly. Like you got England to come to Croke Park as well. So your away games were Italy, Scotland, and Wales. So we were very, very confident of beating Italy and Scotland, with greatest respect to those two teams. So we kind of knew that if we could manage to beat England at home, that it would all be set up for a Grand Slam decider against Wales. And I guess the history between Ireland and Wales, and obviously Scotland involved at the time, a one-off game for a Grand Slam, yeah, we would have fancied it. So yeah, like you said, that I suppose momentum that French victory gave us, and then the possibility of a pathway to a Grand Slam. significant, definitely.
Tomás, we were speaking to Ronan O'Gara a few weeks ago about Antoine Dupont, about the scrum-half position in France. And I guess as somebody who's played a few games in France yourself, could you just first of all outline how important the scrum-half is to playing rugby in France, to being on the French team?
Yeah, look, it's a position obviously I suppose they revere, and Le Petit General, the folklore around that position is massive in France. Actually, I played my last game of professional rugby against Dupont. I was playing with Montpellier, and he was with Castres at the time. Before he was moving to Toulouse, and he made a line break and a little offload to basically decide that game too. He's a phenomenal player. He seems to have everything. His ability to break the line. You see, he's deft little kicking game the last day, and he's got a good pass. So he's very, very lively around the pitch. His impact at international rugby has been outstanding. Definitely the form 9 in the world, if not the form player in the world. So, but I think you'll see a lot of kind of influence and concentration on the Irish team. He'll be a marked man this weekend. So I'd be very, very surprised if he causes us too much problems. I think that it'll be like drilled into this Irish team. How important he is to their game plan, and you might see him put on his arse a bit. If he does bring the ball to the line, little pass away, you'll see them put him on the ground, slow him down, and make sure he takes 4 or 5, 6 seconds to get up off the ground. But yeah, he's been a phenomenal player since he broke onto the scene.
Was it obvious in that game? Sorry, was it obvious in that game that he was a genius when you were playing against him, even when he was that young?
Yeah, it was obvious there was something about him. The line break that he made, he bounced off one of our back rows, and the size of him, and 5 foot, nothing scrum half, usually don't bounce off back rows, and then go 40 yards before offloading to whoever it was to win the game. And he had that attitude that all kind of cocky confidence scrum halves have. He was highly rated sign, but when you do come up against the fella, you kind of know lads who have that X factor, definitely. And that X factor that he had definitely was that ability to bring the ball to the line and make a line break. So, kind of knew that he'd do all right for himself.
Is there something about a scrum half that allows him to bounce off a back row, or is it just brute strength?
I guess he's low centre of gravity helps. But he's power. Yeah, look, he's a powerful unit for the size of him. Once a bigger man tries to get lower to the ground, obviously he loses his centre of gravity. He's power axis. So it's more difficult for him to execute the tackle in that case. So obviously Dupont in that situation utilised that to his advantage. But he just has a hell of a lot of power for a man his size.
How apart from hitting him if he moves to the line, what else could you do to try and prevent somebody of his talent having a massive influence on the game?
I think just the integrity of your line. So you're not leaving holes in around the ruck. So your whatever they call it, pillar, post, your 10, 20, 30 defenders, that they're defending as a trio, and that they all know their roles. So obviously, if he breaks, you leave him to the second man so he doesn't pop an inside pass. So you're just basically ensuring that trio around the ruck are really communicating and talking up and saying, I have Dupont or I have the inside runner or whatever it is. So communication is key. And you might find as well that they might assign maybe R7 or whoever it is, whether it's Van der Fleer or whoever, to maybe target him once or twice. Look, that's international rugby. No one will admit that in public, but you will see him put on his arse once he gets the ball and brings it to the line. And then, of course, line speed is key as well. So, try and force him back in when maybe do make a little line break, and he's trying to fling the ball wide to get the ball to the likes of Teddy Thoma and their speedsters out wide. That maybe you cut off the outside pass. Drico was fantastic at that, whereby you make them cut back in, you make them slow down again. So I think just line speed and communication and the integrity of the line around the ruck is key when you're dealing with a 9 like Dupont.
Who should start for us?
At 9, I'd go with Murray still at 9. I think Gibson Park again. Look, he added a bit of tempo towards the end of the game, but I suppose naturally the Irish team was pushing the envelope. We're trying to move the ball. We're trying to get that try. I think, look, it's very, very close. All the nines, like even the two lads who are in the Six Nations squad, Casey and Gibson Park. Luke McGrath had an unbelievable second half against Munster, and basically I felt controlled that game and won that game for Leinster, and he didn't make the squad. And then you've the likes of Cooney, Marmion, Blade. I think there's very little between Gibson Park, Casey, and the four those guys I mentioned. But at the moment, I'd stick with Conor Murray, especially this game. Now we'll see what happens at 10 as well. But you have Conor Murray, who was 80 plus caps. I think Dupont has probably nearly 30 caps, but there is an experience with Calabert at 10 as well. So, I think Ireland might have the advantage if Sexton starts at 10 and Murray can start at 9. Whether we like it or not, there was kind of shoots of hope, when in the first half when we held the ball and we moved it wide and we stressed the Welsh defence. Hopefully we'll see more of that on this weekend, but I think a pragmatic approach as well has to be welcomed. And you're going to have to see Murray kick it at 9, or you're going to have to see whether it's Sexton control the ball at 10 as well. So, but I think Murray will start at 9, and I think he's still the best man for the job. I don't think anyone has put their hand up and said that number 9 jersey is mine, other than Conor Murray.
How far away is Craig Casey, do you think?
He looks really good. Looks really, really good, but we haven't seen him prove it at Hiding Cup level yet. So it's difficult to see how he'll do at international rugby. I've no doubt that he will prosper there. I've no doubt that he'll be a top class 9 there. But it's difficult for Farrell to throw him in first anyway. Maybe he takes a punt and says, I'm bringing Casey onto the bench and we're going to see what he does for 20 minutes against France. I think he'd do well. He's kind of a similar ilk or similar build to Dupont, actually. Probably hasn't shown as much of a threat at the line as of yet, but you see he's made a few little mini breaks with Munster. His pass is fantastic, very, very slick. He's quick to the breakdown. So obviously he's going to give your 10 an extra bit, and his kicking game looks decent as well. So I think he's definitely capable of playing international rugby, but as of yet, because of the lack of European Cup experience and maybe the lack of even Pro 14 experience last year, whereby I thought they should have played him a hell of a lot more. I think we haven't enough of him.
I've one last one for you. It's a comment from Brendan, wants to know, why is Cooney not in the squad despite being the form 9 since the Rugby World Cup? Is there something in Cooney's game that we can't see, that you see as a scrum half, that the Irish coaching ticket sees and doesn't trust?
No, honestly, there's nothing that I see that tells me that John Cooney's not capable of playing international rugby. Like, he had an unbelievable year. Obviously, his first year into Ulster, whereby everyone was wondering who's going to replace PNR. Like, he was literally man of the match every game. But I don't think he wouldn't be allowed that space, and he wouldn't be utilised that space in international rugby. It's just a different level. He does bring the kicking game as well. I think he'd do a very good job playing international rugby, but I don't know why they have a preference over Gibson Park or why they have a preference over Casey yet. I don't know. I'm not privy to that. And to be honest with you, like I said, the probably issue is that, Gibson Park, Casey, Luke McGrath, Cooney, Marmion, all these guys are on a very, very similar level, and no one has stuck their head above the parapet and said, I'm your man. So that's the issue for the Irish squad. And until there's someone who's Cooney probably did for a year and he didn't get picked for some reason, but now at the moment they're all on a similar level, and there's going to be constant debate, and obviously everyone's going to have their preference as to how a 9 plays and what skill set he has. So I think it's up to one of those players to really put their head and their hand up and say, I'm the man.
Tomás,
Cooney did it before. He never got his award.
Well, look, you've been great with your time, and I'm way over. But I did just want, you mentioned the Montpellier thing. Do we not love our scrum halves enough in Ireland, the way that they do the Petit General and the way they revere them, as you said earlier on? That, like, French rugby culture is better than our culture when it comes to what they do with their scrum halves. Like, it's clear because they keep producing this incredible talent line all the way back. and we probably need to invest more time and love in our scrum halves.
Yeah, I certainly wish I was loved more, but look, that's for another day. I think it's probably down to population as well, and just sheer numbers. Look, obviously the French population and the amount of teams they have, it just maximises the ability to produce multiple nines. But you're right. But even like you could argue that about England as well. You could argue that about Wales. It's just a cultural thing with France for some reason. But definitely, I think when you look at a rugby game, the number 9 actually has his hands on the ball the most. So he is the most influential player on the pitch, whether or not we like it. If he decides to pass, kick, or run, he's going to influence the game more than the 10. Obviously, we've transferred that, or a lot of the international teams and rugby teams have transferred the impetus and the influence onto a 10, whereby the 9 is just a conduit between the forwards and the backs. But definitely in France, it's the 9 is the main man, the 9 is the petit general. So it's a cultural thing, and I think it would be great to see a shift, not only in Ireland, but in rugby in general, to see the 9 being the more dominant and an influential player, definitely.
All right. Are France going to beat us on Saturday?
No, I think we'll make a win.
Right.
I think we'll be able to defend their threats, and hopefully we'll see Andy Farrell's influence in attack coming to fruition.
Tomás, great stuff. Great to have you with us. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
Tomás O'Leary giving us some very nice memories of 2009. If you haven't seen that, we'll tweet out I found a link there to the first half. It's unbelievable. The rugby quality is sensational. France make in stoppage time at the end of the first half, they score a drop goal to make it 13-10. It is one of the best halves of rugby that you'll see. It goes end to end, they're toe to toe, and there's loads of space. There's loads of space for attackers. They get the ball and they're not immediately swallowed up or smashed. It's like, oh, this is a game of skill as opposed to a game of brute force. Loads of comments, as I said, coming through. Stephen says he was asking about the most important part of a scrum half's game. Mike McCarthy, the former Irish lock, was asking about, is Dev Toner our succession plan at number 10? How are you, Mike? I hope you're well. Una says, can we get away with our usual kicking game against the French team? The answer is no, we can't. We can't just kick the ball back to the French and go, you're really good at the back there. Oh, that was a nice move that you pulled as you ran the ball in under our posts. Should Jamison Gibson Park start to live with the pace of Dupont and Jalabert? They're not going to start Gibson Park, are they? Ahead of Connor. The team is going to be the team. There'll be one change, or maybe two. But even then, I think there won't be. I think he's going to back Earls to come out of his funk, because if you don't back the player, then his last experience is a bad game. You don't give him the opportunity to recover. Who was on the show that said he's been in dressing room since he was 16. He's a player's coach. Was that Brian on Monday night? Somebody said it recently anyway, and I think that I'd be surprised if the team selection shows much change.
Yeah, no, same as. But just on that France point you made, this seems to be the way when you look back at any of these old French games, is Ireland being entertained by France a little bit. Like when we did that classic game club last year of the Brian O'Driscoll hat-trick game in 2000. The French were unbelievable in that game as well. It was just onslaught after onslaught, and all these ridiculous attempts at trying to score the perfect try, which held them up in the end, and they would have beaten us in the end if it wasn't the case.
That try they scored in 09. That try they scored in 09 is pretty perfect. It reminded me 100% of the Babas against New Zealand, the try that keeps getting shown again and again. A reminder, the Six Nations show returns live from 10:30 on all our social channels. Today, Neil Tracy is going to be joined by Johnny Murphy and Alison Miller to look ahead to Ireland against France, and we'll also be picking out the standout performers from the tournament so far. It's 14 minutes past 8. Loads more to come. Philippe Auclair before 9 o'clock. The latest on the GAA season with John Duggan. We're talking about the Australian Open with Colm Boohig. We're back talking Johnny Sexton right after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the ball.
Very early stages, and here they come again. Chance for McTominay. Oh, he's made it two goals for Scott McTominay inside the opening 3 minutes.
Manchester United will hope to get back to winning ways in the Premier League this Sunday, and we'll have full live match commentary of their visit to West Brom on Off the Ball. Brian Kerr and Stephen Doyle will call the action at the Hawthorns, followed by Stephen McPhail and Nathan Murphy as Leeds visit Arsenal. We'll have all the updates from Andy Dunn at the Aviva as Ireland take on France in the Six Nations. Plus Hector O'Huckagon and Maura Trasimé-Callig will join me on the paper review.
Off the ball. Don't miss a moment of the action every weekend from 1 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app.
Calling all builders, joiners, plasterers and dryliners. Need advice on the right materials for the job? Consider it done. You need them on site and in your hand. Consider it done. You want access to over 10,000 products from the leading construction brands without having to start up the van. Consider it done. There's another way of doing things. eTag. We talk with you to solve your problem and deliver what you need directly onto site. No second guessing, no seconds wasted. Click etag.ie.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, study the form with our Racing Post Spotlight before watching the action with free live streaming on all UK and Irish horse races. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Yeah, I'm pretty saddened and shocked by the inaccurate reports that were thrown out yesterday, I think it was. We've been here before, Michael, and it's very frustrating. And you know, for me, I just think it's totally inappropriate that a doctor that I have seen many years ago now felt it was appropriate to come out and talk to whoever it was and say those things. It's inaccurate and highly inappropriate, and yeah, I'm pretty disappointed. But for me, I'm so used to it that it's almost like water off a duck's back to me. But for my wife and mum and stuff like that, it's very very upsetting. But that's the world we live in, and I don't really want to talk too much more about it. Like I said, it was inaccurate, and just got to focus on this week and the return to play. If I don't pass one of those stages, I won't play. If I do pass them, well, then I'll be fit to play, and whether I play or not is down to the coaches then, and that's the way we've always done it. And I trust the medicals guys here. They look after us incredibly well, and I will continue to trust them.
That's Johnny Sexton at yesterday's press conference rebutting the claims on French radio from Dr. Jean-François Sherman, who had made the 30 concussions remark. He has rode back from that. I should never have cited this figure without any explanation, and I regret the wrong I've done to the player who was my patient and who I respect more than anyone. You know, the row back yesterday certainly had all the hallmarks of somebody who had received very stern correspondence from this part of the world, and he was very quick in coming out to distance himself from it. So we'll see if there's any further repercussions for Jean-François Sherman for what he said. Now, he wasn't the only neurologist, is the thing. So I guess the conversation yesterday focused almost exclusively on the 30 concussions remark and figure, which obviously Sexton had come out and said that wasn't true, it was completely inaccurate. But there were other French neurologists in Midi Olympique who were saying that they were concerned about players playing so quickly after failing HIAs, and that's a theme that's picked up today in the Irish Times. Barry O'Driscoll has spoken to Gavin Crumisky, and it's like taking Sexton out of the whole issue, right? This is really just concerning because O'Driscoll obviously was part of the World Rugby concussion committee, but resigned because they were running tests on an underage. They were trialling a 5-minute pitch-side HIA, and he was like, "This is absolutely at an underage tournament. This is ludicrous," because at that stage in 2012, they knew that kids' brains develop differently. They're not fully developed, and so therefore you can't actually assess what damage a concussion will do to a child. And remember, these are under 18, so they're children. He says today, the HIA and return to play protocols have no scientific standing. The 6-day return to play came in because the game went professional and there was pressure to get a player back for the next game. It was based on nothing else. We are damaging players' brains again and again, and unfortunately, the things that will happen to them won't happen for 5 years, some won't happen for 20 years. There's no way of doing a test to see who will get multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, anxiety, depression or dementia from CTE. We do not know, but we do know we are abusing these young men. That's Dr. Barry O'Driscoll, who at 77 has been involved in rugby his entire life. and who has been studying and talking about concussion for a long period of time. The CTE thing is important. So that's kind of that was the tipping point in the NFL when they realised that they were. So after a former NFL player dies, the brain gets studied. They cut the brain and they see the damage that has happened to the brain, and it's the CTE was the is what the pathology is called, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, whatever that last word is, CTE. And they found that it was caused by concussion. But there are subsequent studies which suggest that you don't have to have a full-blown diagnosed concussion. A subconcussion can also lead to CTE. So they found some college footballers who had CTE but who had never had a diagnosed concussion. And they said subconcussive blows were the things that had caused this. So we're talking about the brain, and we're talking, I'm exclusively talking from a position of having read about it as opposed to knowing anything about it. But certainly when you read about it, it becomes really, really worrying. And then you start to see what the English players who are taking the class action against the RFU and World Rugby, what their experience is like. And you're really, really worried about what the future is like for any of that group of players who played rugby from the time that it turned professional up until, you know, now. Because Barry O'Driscoll says the return to play protocols don't have any scientific standing, that essentially it's a business expediency to get the best players playing as soon as they possibly can, and we're ticking these boxes along the way. So again, I'm separating the story that happened this week from that other conversation because, you know, we're not making any leap and we're not making any connection between them. But what did happen last week was there were 5 HIAs in that one game. And there could have been more. You know, there could absolutely have been more. Somebody was making the point about the forwards at the bottom of the ruck. You don't really see it, but they get up and they trundle on. And, like, that's a bad thing. That is a bad thing that's happening so much. So I would be very worried about the future for the game.
Yeah, that was James Colm making that point yesterday on the show, that those at the bottom of the ruck you don't actually see. So the thing with Sexton, it's not that he's had more head injuries than anybody else. He's just had more obvious knocks than everybody else because he's a targeted player on the pitch. So scientifically, I'm sure there are tons of other players who have been hit more than Sexton if you were to do that. And it is about separating those two things. And I do think the bigger story this week was the violence, or not the violence, but the toughness of last Sunday and the required toughness almost of last Sunday, and the 5 HIAs and the frequency with which they're happening. And I guess changing that test, if rugby, if it is being told that it's not fully scientific and it is not the best way to go forward, that needs to change, because as you say, the change is going to come in one way or another. The class action lawsuit or whatever it's going to turn out to be is going to be damaging to the sport possibly, and it looks like it's something that could be an existential threat to the sport in its current guise. And at the moment, it's like things are just getting harder and harder. Like, you mentioned the fact that there was a number of different neurologists who've come out this week. Jean Chazal was the one who spoke to Midi Olympique, and like he equated one of the knocks in the game last week to a bad uppercut that a boxer would receive. Like, so this is the intensity that doctors are looking at this and equating it to. Granted, this is just anecdotal evidence that he would have been using, and maybe he's going to be a French doctor who rose back in his comments as well. But if we separate the Sexton story here, because while it is I guess the headline story, and it is true that the doctor has done a U-turn, the one that spoke on RMC. This is a different conversation to just Johnny Sexton. This is a much bigger thing, as we've become very well aware of over the last few years. Yeah, absolutely. 24 minutes past 8 this morning. Let's have a quick look at what's on OTBSports.com for you this morning. Dermot Gallagher, the life of an Irish referee abroad, and his broad Ringsend accent. Great picture of him and Roy Keane having the chats. I presume Cork and Dublin meeting on a field in Manchester. No need to dress up the accents there. Murray, Ireland have no place to hide after defeat to Wales. Conor Murray doing a bit of press yesterday, and the GAA say no resumption of activity until Easter at the earliest. Easter Rising. GAA eyeing up Easter Rising was the headline on the back of the Herald this morning. So the subs in the Indo group earning their stripes. 24 minutes past 8. A reminder, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Time for us to turn our attention to the tennis. Colm Boohig, it says here, your serve. Where are you bringing us?
Morning, Ger. Morning, Eoin. Yeah, the Australian Open, it's up It's going. It felt like it was never going to happen. It was delayed by 3 weeks. There was 72 players put into hard quarantine after 3 flights, one from Abu Dhabi, one from Doha, one from Los Angeles, arrived with COVID positive cases confirmed. And a lot of those 72 players have crashed out. The most high profile being the defending women's champion, Sophia Kenin, is gone overnight. She's lost 6-3, 6-2 to the veteran Estonian Kai Kanepi. Now, Kanepi has previous in beating high profile players at Grand Slams. She's beaten former Grand Slam champion Simona Halep, Angelique Kerber, Caroline Wozniacki, but this is a major shock from a player of Kenin's ilk who won last year's Australian Open in fantastic fashion. She beat Garbine Muguruza in a brilliant final, and she just lost the French Open final to Iga Swiatek. But it's a ridiculously strong women's lineup this year, whereas the men's, it's kind of who's going to face Novak Djokovic. And for the sake of interest for all tennis fans, whether that be intense or casual, we're hoping it's Nick Kyrgios, but the chances of him making it all the way to the semi-final are highly unlikely. Entertaining nonetheless.
Okay, talk to us a bit more about the crowd before we get into Kyrgios. So this is still our 15 love point here. How many fans? What kind of atmosphere at the moment?
It's half capacity, so you can expect about 400,000 fans over the fortnight in Melbourne. So they have to wear masks entering the grounds, walking around the grounds. Once they sit in the seats, they can take off the masks. But it just makes a monumental difference. Like, there were no fans at all at the US Open. There were very limited fans at the French Open, I think 100 per stadium. But here it's half full per stadium. And you're really seeing the benefits of a brilliant atmosphere as a result. And to be fair, it does make tennis a lot more interesting for most people when the crowd are like that. And it was like a Davis Cup-like raucous atmosphere, especially in the home favourite matches like the likes of Ash Barty and Kyrgios and Thanasi Kokkinakis, who's playing Stefanos Tsitsipas. They're the brilliant matches, but we've already seen crowds just react brilliantly in on-court post-match interviews to the likes of Tsitsipas and Djokovic, where they're hissing and booing the players, and it's all kind of pantomime villain stuff, but it's brilliant to watch from afar anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the notoriously, famously polite Australian crowds at sports events, who would have thought we'd miss them? What was the crack with Tsitsipas? Did he win or lose? Sorry, he's still in it, is he?
Yeah, he won. So he won his first round against Gilles Simon. He won that pretty comfortably. But afterwards, that's exactly what he said in the crowd, or in the post-match interview on court. So he kind of said, now in fairness, the interviewer prompted him, but he was saying, yeah, I didn't expect it to be that easy. And then the crowd started booing him, and he didn't know what to do with it. He was like, I didn't mean it like that. I'm just saying I played brilliantly well. And then they started booing him again. And he was like, I'm just going to walk away. I just can't do it. He just couldn't deal with them. And so he's playing as we speak, because obviously with the Australian Open, they're 11 hours ahead in Melbourne. So a lot of the matches are actually happening as OTB AM is happening. And Tsitsipas is in the midst of a brilliant match with Kokkinakis, who is a home favourite, former wonder boy who has really struggled with injury the last few years. But this is after the first round match. So if he does prevail in this match, I'll be interested to hear the post-match interview. But the crowd are just relentless and ruthless. And Tsitsipas just couldn't deal with it. And then in the post-match press conference, he was visibly shook. Like he was like, I can't believe they treated me like that. But I mean, to me, it was a joke, and they were just messing with him. But he was really surprised by their reaction. He was just being honest and earnest in his view. But the crowd were booing him anyway.
What about Kyrgios? I found myself, this is our 30 love point, found myself being in the unusual situation of going, yeah, Nick Kyrgios, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, you're right, Nick. Good man.
Like, if he reaches the semi-final, it'll be an unbelievable payoff. I've been saying it pretty much all this week on Twitter. It would be against his best buddy, Novak Djokovic. But, I mean, the chances of him getting to that are pretty much nil, because in the third round, he's playing Dominic Thiem, who outside of Djokovic and Rafael Nadal is the best player in the tour. So he did really well in the first round. He beat a player who has the initials FFS, Federico Ferreira Silva, who's playing his first ever Grand Slam match. And watching Kyrgios, it is like FFS, because he just goes through all these motions, and like they become so predictable to watch after a while. It's like, you know he's just getting head up and aggressive to get himself going, but he's taking it out on other people, and it's just, after a while, you just get annoyed watching him. But he is such a brilliant player on his day. I mean, that's the reason why he continues to get airtime. Like, he is box office. He does have an unbelievable array of shots. But, like, for instance, in that match against FFS in the first round, he went 2-love down the first 2 games. Bear in mind, Silva had never played a Grand Slam match ever before, like, so he had no right to be going 2-love up against a relatively experienced player like Kyrgios. And Kyrgios, to show his frustration, turned around to his box and said to a member of his box, "Get your girlfriend out of here." Now, like, we don't know who he was saying it to. We don't know if the person in question left, but that's how he takes it out in his own team. And then he was having problems with the time between serves and getting called by the umpire, even though every player knows there's literally a countdown timer right there to see how long you have between serves. And he was complaining about that. But you can almost tell he's just doing that to rile himself up. And then the other side of Kyrgios is, and it's something I shared on Twitter the other day, is his tweener shots, the shots between the legs, and just like his ridiculous skill level of being able to pull those off when, like, these courts this year are playing really fast. They get relayed every year, and they're really fast this year. Even Djokovic is struggling a bit, like he lost the set in his second round match. But Kyrgios has just unbelievable reflexes. So, like, shot was coming straight at him, and he just puts the racket under his legs. It's pretty much a volley at the net, and it goes over. And then he puts his arms out, Eric Cantona style, to be championed by the crowd, who actually really do love him. So he got through his first round in straight sets. It's relatively okay. But it was against Hugo Humbert in the second round where it was, like Kyrgios said afterwards, it was the best match he's ever been involved in. And he was 2 match points down in the fourth set. And he came back to win that in 5 sets.
Okay. So if he does get through to meet Djokovic, obviously, it will be as a result of playing great tennis to that point. Okay, so 40 love, the women's side, very strong. What's going on? Why is it so strong this time?
Yeah, it's unbelievable because basically the last 2 or 3 years there's been so many different women's champions because of Serena Williams being on maternity leave and coming back and not being as good as she was. And all those players are playing at this tournament. So that's the first time they've all played. So you have home favourite and world number 1, Ash Barty, who is safely through to the third round. She just won her second round match. She won her first round 6-love against a player called Danka Kovanic, who won 10 points in total. Or to put it another way, every time she won a point, she earned 10,000 Australian dollars. That's how few points she won. That's how dominant Barty can be. She wasn't as dominant in the second round, but she won pretty comfortably. So she's the favourite. As I say, the defending champion, Kenin, is out, but you have Simona Halep, who's a two-time Grand Slam champion. You have Naomi Osaka, who won the Australian Open 2 years. She's the defending US Open champion and a 3-time Grand Slam champion overall. You have Garbine Muguruza, who reached the Australian Open final last year, also a former Grand Slam winner. You have Iga Swiatek, who won the French Open a few months ago against Kenin. And of course, you have Serena Williams. So if Serena Williams wins, remember, she will be the all-time record Grand Slam holder on the women's side with 24 titles. But she hasn't won a Grand Slam in 4 years. It was a 2017 Australian Open against her sister Venus when she was actually pregnant without realising it and beat everybody in straight sets to win the title, which was one of the most phenomenal sporting achievements I can think of. But since she's come back from giving birth, she's been to 4 Grand Slam finals and lost them all in straight sets. So there's obviously this mental block for a player who really is the best women's player of all time, but she just has to confirm that and solidify it and eclipse Margaret Court.
Well, I think we can happily blank Margaret Court from existence. There's also the possibility she just has come off a point where she was invincible and she's not as good anymore, and that it's not a mental block, but that her game won't ever get back to a point where there isn't somebody that fortnight who's better than her. That's a possibility at that age.
Yeah, like she's approaching 40. Those names I've mentioned already are all better than her, but on her day, she's so dominant still. I mean, in all those 4 Grand Slam finals that she's reached in the last 2 years, she's dominated everybody en route to all 4 finals. It's that when she falls up short is those finals. I don't think that anybody is that much better than her. The players that I've mentioned probably are on their day these days, but Serena's so dominant, like she intimidates most of the players because she's so powerful with her serves, and she's just such an intimidating presence because she has that aura about her. She's one of a handful of tennis players who does. And you wouldn't be surprised if she won the Australian Open, but there are at least 3 or 4 players who I think will win it ahead of her. But if she did, it would be great because she'd get to 24. And it's the same with Rafa Nadal. He's on the cusp of being on his own at that mountain as well if he wins.
Would Serena winning a Grand Slam in her 40s be better than Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl at 43?
Yeah, because she has to do it on her own. She's just out there on her own. So yeah, I would say it's a phenomenal achievement. Yeah, especially because it's been 4 years since she's won one. Yeah, I mean that would be up there with potential, even though we're early doors, as the sporting moment of 2021 if she won a Grand Slam at this age, considering it's been so long since she has won one.
Even better than Andy Murray's win last year.
Well, no, I mean, you're pushing it there, but it'll be good. Like, it'll be good.
Ger gave the shifty eyes there. He's not buying your theory that it is better than Tom Brady, I think.
Oh, that's fine. It's an opinion. I'd like to hear why you think Tom Brady would be a better achievement.
I think that we don't need to pit these two things against each other. They will
exactly. We can all live in harmony. Yeah.
It's so boring.
Well, no,
wait to take the air out of the debate, Ger. Thanks for that.
Well, look, we haven't talked about the Irish kid who's like half Irish at least. So Michael Moe, he's playing Nadal. He's American, Irish, Nigerian, Australian from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, very talented by all accounts. Haven't seen a lot of him.
He's 17, or is he, no? That was a couple of years ago.
I'm not sure of his age actually. I'm not sure. But yeah, like it'll be a serious experience for him. Like it would just be so good to have anyone connected with Ireland. Anyone connected with Ireland at all would be great. Just to have someone to.
23. Yeah, his mum was an Irish nurse.
Yeah, that's enough. Like that, we'll take that. Like,
what are you talking about? Like,
that's it's
Patrick McEnroe played Davis Cup for Ireland.
Yeah, well, we need something because it would just be unbelievable. I mean, if you're looking at the biggest picture, can you imagine an Irish player on centre court at Wimbledon? Can you imagine the fanfare that player will get? Can you imagine the interest levels would just increase considerably? So it'll be unbelievable. I mean, look, you're kind of fearing the worst from against Nadal, but it will still be an experience if he can get a set off Nadal. You never know because Nadal's really struggling. Like he has a really bad back injury. He's only won the Australian Open once. That was in 2009. He's reached 5 finals, but he's been beaten 4 times. So it's not his strongest service. It's not very comfortable in Australia. So you never know. I highly doubt it. There would be some story. All
right. Colm, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. That was your match point.
Cheers, lads.
Well done. So the overnight update was defending champ Sophia Kennan, as we've said, has crashed out in straight sets. And there were 10 new COVID cases in Victoria at a Melbourne Holiday Inn. As yet, this will have no impact on the Australian Open, but Victoria's been very strict with COVID, so it's a developing story. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll have Colm back next week, of course, to when the business end hots up and everybody starts tuning in. But the Australian Open, not a bad one to be able to watch during the day. At 8:37, let me tell you what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. At 10:30, it's live, the Six Nations show. At noon, it's Not a Sport, Roller Derby. That's end of series. OTB Gold, Centaur, Declan Murphy. That book that Declan Murphy wrote about having a horrific injury and then recovering from it and being essentially a different person. State of the Union, Keith Wood's State of the Union from 3 o'clock with Philip Brown. Our retro panel is League of Ireland players moving to England. OTB Gold is Sonia Sullivan Roadshow, and live tonight, Nathan hosting John Giles, Shane Carthy on his new book, Dark Blue, The Despair Behind the Glory. And that's all coming your way from 7 o'clock tonight. You can listen on the OTB Sports app. We have a full live continuous stream of top quality sports radio content there for you as well. John Duggan is with us this morning. John, we have some news from the GAA.
Yes, Ger and Eoin, good morning. There'll be no GAA activity, I think, as we know, including training until Easter at the earliest. The association's fixture calendar now up in the air after it was revealed Gaelic Games is no longer covered under level 5 exemptions for elite level sports during the COVID pandemic. The GAA Director of Communications, Alan Milton, was on News Talk Breakfast earlier on. He says breaches by counties in terms of training or supporters were not mentioned as a reason for the GAA to be no longer exempt from level 5 restrictions.
They've been very, very few and far between. I think they need context. And even last year, and I was quoted regularly as saying we'd over 20,000 games and we'd a handful of county finals that were challenging. So I think we would have heard about it before now if they were an issue.
So what does that do in terms of the fixture calendar? It throws it completely up in the air. Are the leagues going to happen? Are the club season, is that going to follow the inter-county season? What's going to happen there? Well, Alan Milton says the ambition is to hold the national leagues.
For obvious reasons, we're a games organisation. We don't want to kill off competitions unless we have to. It's an important competition, and it would also have a potential bearing on the Tailteann Cup if it was to go ahead, which is the second-tier football competition. So we certainly hope we don't have to go there.
So frustrating time for Gaels, lads. Not only no games, but no training until Easter at the earliest.
We had to look up when Easter was, John. It's the 4th of April. So early April, and hopefully training comes back fairly soon after that one. So their contention is that what happened in Cork, where the players were training on the beach and that footage went viral, or down. I mean, obviously down would have less impact. That would have been the PSNI who were policing on that one, and obviously wouldn't have had any impact on, I presume, our government's making the decision. But that didn't have any impact on. Has it essentially lost its elite status, or is it just that there was, what is the exact situation that we find ourselves in here?
Well, it had elite status between October and December, so you're able to run off the All-Ireland Championships. It's an amateur game with players going back into their community. Maybe, and I think we have to find out what the government say about this, because we need probably a better sense of understanding from the government of what the actual reason for the GAA no longer to be in level 5 exemptions, and the League of Ireland, for example, which will return in March or due to, will be elite and will be exempt, and the rugby at the moment is exempt. So I think we need a clearer answer from the government on that. Is it the case that there are new strains that make any kind of increase in community activity or of a risk? That could be a possible factor. That the actual health landscape has changed from now vis-a-vis last year. That could be something. But Alan Milton said that issues around county finals or issues around any breaches were not mentioned as the reason for GAA no longer to be in level 5. But if we were in level 5 the rest of the year, it would mean there's no inter-county action. So we have to be in a position where things are better, or in level 4 or level 3 or whatever level we're in, for inter-county matches and for Gaelic Games activity to resume. So it is a change, and we're into an uncertain time. Not the first time we've said that, but there is definitely a change in the landscape now.
Yeah, so essentially the professional sports are going to be allowed to continue, but the amateur ones aren't.
Yeah. Yes, correct.
Yeah, so look, let's wait and see exactly what happens, because it would be interesting, I think, if this does get extended out. At some point they might just decide that inter-county is fine, and they decide that you've got a 8 or 10 or 12 week window, and at that point whatever they can get away, they get away, and you'd have to assume that they'll pick championship and prioritise championship over league. So look, we'll obviously keep going with that story and do our best to get some more details on it. But let's talk a little bit about Gareth Bale and the FA Cup last night, John. As a Spurs fan, the one job Mourinho has is to win trophies, and he's in a final, but it's against a side that, all of a sudden looks pretty good, and this was a competition I think he had his eye on.
The League Cup trophy is the kind of, when you win, I don't know, a goblet or a trophy when you're 13 or something, and it's somewhere in the back of a cupboard or something like that. That's what the League Cup means to me. The wins in 99 and 2008 really completely pale in comparison to Mauricio Pochettino bringing Tottenham to a Champions League final. So if they beat Manchester City, you've won 15 games in a row now. That's great and everything. We love the day. We'll have a few socially distant drinks in our living room couch. But once again, you're conceding 5 goals last night to Everton, 5-4 defeat. It was haphazard in terms of the defending. It was very exciting. It was great to watch it. But Gareth Bale wasn't even in the squad. He's on 250,000 sterling a week. And Jose Mourinho said that, what was the quote? Bale wasn't happy in training this week.
So I don't think it is an obvious, clear injury. I would say feels uncomfortable. And because of that, the training session couldn't be 100%. But I don't think we can speak about an injury.
Okay.
So that's a pretty
it's a lot of money for. He's just
a lot of money for a rope.
He doesn't feel it this week.
Yeah, there's a lot of money for a rope. You wonder what the rest of the players think. And we just have to, I suppose, is Gareth Bale's career as a top level footballer over? He might end up in the MLS. He might play in China, but is his career as a top level footballer finished? I think you have to ask that question.
I think it is, because I actually don't know how long is left in his contract. That would be interesting. Is there another season at Real Madrid where they're going to have to continue to pay him that amount of money, where he'll go back and sit on the bench, or is this the end of it now? They're out from under him at the end of this year. But either way, no team in the Premier League, no team who comes up from the Championship who'll go, oh look, we got Gareth Bale, look, it's amazing, everybody. Because no, that would be not a good thing to have in your dressing room. Maybe he can go to Southampton. Or maybe he can go to Cardiff and play a season in Cardiff with Big Mick.
Terry Connor.
On buttons, do it for nothing to try and get them into the Premier League. But you can't see any credible Premier League manager saying to his board or his football director, let's spend whatever millions on this guy.
If you're not going to play in the FA Cup matches, which are seen as secondary matches to the Premier League, you're not going to be involved in any way, shape or form. You're not even in the squad. Dele Alli is even getting a look in now. And he's been persona non grata under Jose Mourinho. Gareth Bale isn't even at Dele Alli status. And that's how far the drop has been since scoring that amazing goal in the Champions League final against Liverpool. To my memory, it was 2018. It's absolutely staggering fall.
Out of contract. Contract at Real Madrid expires 2022.
So a year and a half.
Yeah.
So it's another year of those wages. Fair play to him. Fair play to his agent.
No, absolutely. But he's still only 31. You know, there's 3 or 4 years left of him playing top quality football if he wanted to. And I'm really disappointed because I thought this was actually a relatively risk-free move for Spurs. That when Harry Kane gets injured, that you're going to have somebody who can step in and be dynamic and exciting, and it's great for the club because he's obviously a club hero. They've got him back. He has an Indian summer, and away we go. But no, that has not been the case.
And if you're disappointed, if I'm disappointed, how much Daniel Levy and Jose Mourinho feel, because the egg is all over their faces completely on this. And if Mourinho, whether he wanted him or not, he hasn't, and it hasn't worked. And
expensive truffle oil eggs all over their face.
I never had one, but yeah, I probably shouldn't. What else happened? Yeah, so I said Manchester City 3-1 over Swansea last night, 15th win in a row. Leicester beating Brighton 1-0, the most bizarre goal by Iheanacho, when all the Brighton defenders like ducks ran to the corner flag. Everybody's got to watch that goal back. Sheffield United 1-0 winners over Bristol City. Chelsea away to Barnsley tonight in the FA Cups. The 6th round draw will be made as well. Wolves playing Southampton at Molineux. And the tennis, Sophia Kenin-Ausch beaten in Melbourne, the Australian Open. She was the winner last year, 6-3, 6-2 by Kaya Kanepi. Wins this morning as well for Ashley Barty, the world number 1, and Karolina Pliskova. This morning we got Coco Gauff against Elina Svitolina. Also Rafael Nadal and Daniil Medvedev in action. And golf, Seamus Power is playing at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am just before 6 o'clock Irish time this evening. He tees off. Horse racing at Thurles Lads is at 1:45.
Okay, Virtual Insanity is up. The tips are out. How are we doing?
We're doing 2 second-place finishes in 5 tournaments. And Louis Westhuizen, who was the headline tip last week, kicked me in the whatever by being tied second in the final round and slithering out of the places. So it was it was TV out the window stuff, rock star style. But I do feel that I'm seeing things, and I do feel confident. The football bets are going great, so I do feel a good sense about this. 156 players. This is a weak field compared to normal tour events. Each way terms a fifth of the odds, 8 players. OTBSports.com, the OTB app. Feeling confident the winner is just around the corner. The headline tip, Scott Stallings, 3 each way, 80-1. The greens of Pebble Beach, Poa Anu greens, tricky, spongy. He hit the ball well last week in Phoenix, Scott Stallings. And he's got an excellent record in this tournament. I do believe in horses for courses. 3rd, 7th and 14th in the last 4 years. Scott Stallings is the headline tip, the American. Francesco Molinari, former Open champion, vanquished by Tiger a couple of years ago at the Masters, but I think he's slowly creeping back into form at 22-1 each way for 2 each way. Never played in the event, but was 16th at the Pebble Beach US Open in 2019. 66 at Torrey Pines on his last start in the final round. Wind won't be an issue. Top 10s in his last 2 tournaments. Francesco Molinari, 22-1. Max Homa, 35-1, plays the other course in the Roja here this week, Spyglass Hillwell. 14th and 10th on his last 2 appearances in this tournament, Max Homa. Harold Varner III is a winner in waiting, 66-1. I think he'll win soon. Played very well last week in Phoenix, hit the ball beautifully, shot a 67 at Pebble Beach last year. And Maverick McNeely is a Maverick bet at 80-1. He went to Stanford near Pebble Beach. His dad founded Sun Microsystems. So there's no shortage of a few bob in the McNeely family. They once had a mansion at Pebble Beach on the course, and he finished 5th there last year. So Maverick McNeely, Harold Varner, Max Homa, Francesco Molinari, all each way with Scott Stallings, lads, the headline tip for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. And we will say that the good luck gods must shine on us this week.
What price is Maverick McNeely?
80-1.
Okay, all right. We like an L Maverick at 80-1. Your column is about Pat O'Callaghan and Bob Tisdale winning their Olympic golds in 1932, an hour apart from each other. Well worth checking out, and it's available now on otbsports.com. John, good stuff. Thanks a million.
All right, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
John Duggan with us there. Let me update you on our poll. We've been asking you this morning what you think should be happening, whether or not the county or the club season should go ahead first. This is in light of the news coming from the GAA that there won't be anything happening. No activity will happen before April. So what should happen first to the GAA calendar in 2021? Club or county? County first 34%, club first 66%. So again, that kind of is how you would expect it to go. I think most people in favour of the club activity happening. County should be called off for the year. Get the clubs open first. Communities need it, says Brian Kenna. Kate Ryan says club in the county, all the towns will be coming together. County players are in some sort of shape. Club players are not, says Wedges. Ben Wood says county players are in... Sorry, that's the same one there. Cut the county league, run challenge games, then knock out county championship and play the club then. So essentially Matt is saying have a straight knockout inter-county GAA championship and play the club season after that, which, you know, isn't a million miles away from exactly what they did in last year's inter-county championship. So we'll see. And Rob says there's a lot less mixing and travelling involved with the club game, which actually on the face of it would seem to be true, but isn't when you think about the numbers of players. So you're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of people all around the county mixing, going to training, playing games, and with club setups, with inter-county setups, it's much more manageable. As Owen pointed out earlier on, there's a bit of a bubble. So, right, what is it? It is 8:51 this morning. If you want to get in touch, feel free, and you can get us on 0879 180 180. It's time for us to turn our attention to football, and I'm delighted to say Philippe Auclair is with us. Philippe, good morning to you. How are you?
Not too bad. Good morning to you too.
Very interested in how Mauricio Pochettino is getting on. He was obviously one of the big fish in world football who was available as a manager and was therefore, you know, the Manchester United fans were making some come-hither eyes. Various clubs in England were thinking, we've got to get this guy. PSG got their man. How's he getting on?
He is getting on as I think most people expecting him to get on, as in it hasn't been a miracle. Suddenly PSG hasn't become this all singing, all dancing, all winning team. He's finding it a little bit of a challenge. The results are okay. The results are good, even, despite a loss, a pretty awful loss at Lorient in Ligue 1. The performances are still not quite what you would expect from a team like PSG. Even last night, they had what seems like a very easy tie against Caen in the French Cup. It wasn't the first 11, but Neymar was in it, and they only won quite painfully, I would say, 1-0, thanks to Moise Kean. And I think he's still basically trying to find out what his best 11 is. He's trying to find a balance. He's trying to find a tactical system as well that would fit his squad. He's actually, I was looking at the type of formations he's already used, and said 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2, back to 4-3-3, back to 4-4-2. So is still very much trying to get things together in a way. The only thing I would say which he's now sure of, for example, I think his midfield is a little bit more settled. Like Leandro Paredes has now become one of the main guys in the midfield with Verratti, of course. But it's not brilliant yet. And I have to say the people in France, and especially among PSG supporters who were not too keen on Thomas Tuchel, are starting to realize that perhaps all the problems were not linked to Thomas Tuchel himself.
That's a very difficult realisation for a lot of fans to come to, because, you know, everything is supposed to be fixed at the flick of a switch.
Indeed, and that hasn't been the case. But to be honest, I mean, he's only at the very start of his PSG career. I think he's managed 8 games. He's lost this one game against Lorient. He has 6 wins. Importantly, very importantly, in the eyes of PSG fans, he won our Classico against Marseille. Now, of course, this is not the great Marseille of the glory years. This is not even the Marseille of the Didier Deschamps years or the Bielsa years. It's a Marseille which is going from one crisis to the next. You know what happened with Andre Villas-Boas and the parting of ways, dramatic parting of ways which happened, and so on. I mean, there is but it was a result which was very important. They won 2-0. Kylian Mbappe scored an absolutely phenomenal goal. So it's okay, but to be honest, there's nothing in what he's done so far that makes you think that we're going to immediately see the PSG that he's capable of putting together. I've got absolutely no doubt about that. And to be honest, the game against Barcelona might come a little bit early in his reign.
This may be sort of an abstract enough question, Philippe, but is there a sense that the likes of Mbappe and Neymar are inspired and impressed by Mauricio Pochettino? I accept that it's very early in the reign to be able to tell, but do they seem like this is the guy that they're going to run through walls for?
I think it probably is true of Neymar. I think that the word is now that the contract extension that PSG has wanted him to sign for a while, things are going pretty well, that he has a good relationship with Pochettino, that he feels at ease and well in Paris as well. So the signs are encouraging for Neymar. When it comes to Kylian Mbappe, again, I think it's much too early to say that. I mean, he's had a pretty horrible season, to be honest, compared to what we've seen from him in the past. But that's been the case. He's been unsettled for a while, and there are still loads of rumors flying around as to, maybe the future for him lies outside of PSG. I mean, to be honest, the next few months are going to be absolutely crucial, but especially, I would say, the next few weeks, because obviously the Champions League is what really matters for PSG. They went to the final with Tuchel. They have got a chance to avenge, so to speak, one of the darkest pages in their history. I mean, apologies for the purple language here, because it certainly was not a tragedy, it was just football, but they still haven't digested what happened in the famous remontada when Neymar actually scored twice against them and Barcelona won 6-1. So, and it's going to be really a means to gauge how much he's been able to inspire this particular team, but it's also going to be a massive hurdle to clear. If they don't clear that, it's going to be a bit problematic, I must say.
And they might have to do it without Neymar.
Sorry?
Neymar obviously injured, and the adductor strain that he suffered the last couple of days, they trying to actually get over the line against Barcelona potentially without Neymar is a huge challenge, you suspect, for Mauricio Pochettino.
It would be. There's also Angel Di Maria, who is very important indeed, and who will not be fit. That is already sure. So, yes, but against that particular Barcelona, which is basically more dependent on Messi than PSG is depending on Neymar, I would say, it would be a problem. But to be honest, I haven't heard the latest on his injury or supposed injury, and I would take things with a little bit pinch of salt, because when Neymar breaks a fingernail in Paris, believe me, immediately there's alarm signals, in every single newsroom. So I would take things a little bit carefully, perhaps.
You mentioned Andre Villas-Boas. We'll come back to PSG in a minute, but I think a lot of people heard the updates about him offering to resign. Has any more details emerged about that? Like, Villas-Boas is a fiery character who likes to pay attention to what's said and written about him. We know this. We've had him on the show, and what the hell is going on there? Because it seemed like the Marseille gig was a good gig for him.
It is a good gig. Well, to a point, it's a good gig on paper. Marseille is a fantastic gig on paper for anybody, for almost anybody. The problem is that the situation at the club with the various chairmen, the ownership, the rumors around the possible sale of the club, which keep being denied, and I keep hearing things suggesting the contrary. The problems with some of the most important players, the fitness of his squad, which is pretty shocking, really. It's not a good place to be at the moment, to be honest. And you can perfectly understand why suddenly something just snapped with the news that the club had apparently signed a player without his consent, and a player that actually Olivier Ncham from Celtic. And in fact that he had specifically asked for this player not to be bought. So it's a complete shambles. It's a mess. There's nothing new, but it's even a more shambolic shambles than it was before you arrived, if you see what I mean. Yeah. And there are people actually who say that, to be honest, what is achieved with Marseille does him quite a lot of credit, because when he arrived, the club was in a really, I mean, in terms of results, was in a downward spiral, and you were wondering even at one point if it couldn't go completely wrong and they could find themselves entangled in a fight against relegation or something like that. So bad were the things, and he managed to steady the ship. And it hasn't been exactly a wonderful Marseille to watch, but the squad that he's that he has with him is simply not to the level of previous ones. And yes, it is an absolute mess. I mean, to say more about it, to be honest, like you, I'll be expecting the news every day and wondering what the next surprise is going to be. We don't know.
Just to go back to Paris Saint-Germain, Philippe, I see France Football mocked up a front page cover of Lionel Messi wearing a PSG jersey this week. I'm not sure if you have that particular issue hanging around at home, but is this going to be the reality? Is this what we're going to see this summer?
I don't think so. I'm not that keen on getting into that, because it's the kind of sea snake that we've kept seeing bobbing up and down, not just in the River Seine, but also in the Manchester canals. And at the moment, what I can tell you for sure is that absolutely no decision has been taken, that the interest is real, that there are many reasons why the interest is real, because there's also a political dimension to it. You can imagine what it would be like for Qatari-owned PSG to claim having a front line of Mbappe, Neymar, and Messi in its personal schoolyard food with Manchester City, say, which belongs to the Emiratis. So yes, it is serious in terms of the interest. Will it happen? I don't think so, but this is purely, I'm speaking purely from intuition and from the way I perceive things rather than from any information, because to be absolutely honest, I don't believe the information is available.
You've mentioned it already, Philippe, but this really is a vital few months for Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah.
Because it seems it could go a number of different ways. You could add Lionel Messi and keep all the superstars, but by the same token, there are enough reports linking Mbappe and Neymar away from the club to suggest that they could be without any superstars come the next season.
I doubt that very much. As I said, for Neymar, the signs are pretty good, and people in Paris are quite optimistic that he will remain at the club. Mbappe is a complicated case. As I said, his performances haven't been at the kind of level we'd come to expect from him. He hasn't progressed as we thought he would progress to become genuinely one of the world's top players. He's still, their contracts are going past. I mean, the months are going past quite quickly, and they need to sort his situation quickly. The fact that Mbappe at one stage genuinely wanted to leave the club, I can vouch for that. I can genuinely vouch for that. And I can also genuinely vouch for the fact that Liverpool was a destination that he was very much interested in. What thing you've got to keep in mind, and this is valid for Messi, this is valid for Neymar, this is valid for Mbappe, this is valid for Harry Kane, is the fact that we are in a very strange economic situation. Believe me, when you're going to see all the accounts of the clubs for 2019, 2020, we've got quite a few already, but we're missing a few more. You'll see it's carnage. 2020, 2021 is going to be even worse. The number of clubs which will be able to put on the table the kind of money that you need to bring a Neymar, not just to bring him, but also to pay the salary. This is, it's not even the fingers, it's fingers on the head of Django Reinhardt. Like, it's only like 2 or 3 in the world. That's it. Which is why you have to, which is why at the moment, if you talk to people inside those circles, they all say that it's very unlikely that there would be big moves this summer, simply because nobody has got the means to move one great player from one club to the next.
Can I ask you about an old adversary of Irish football, Ramon Dominic? We followed his career a lot here.
Yes, and I'm sure that you will have been so saddened by the news that Raymond Domenech had parted ways, which is a very polite way of saying that he was shown the door by FC Nantes after the grand total of 8 games, of which he won precisely none. I have to say that in France, everybody had greeted the news of Domenech being appointed at the head of FC Nantes with dismay. Has to be remembered, by the way, that Dominic hadn't managed a single club game since 30th of June 1993.
What? Wow. Yes. Wow, I didn't know that.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a quiz question, which is what is the longest a manager has spent, in the desert, so to speak. Well, he was, of course, with France under 21s and then with France, and he almost won a World Cup in 2006. But he hadn't managed the club for 27 years, which is crazy. So it went pear-shaped very, very quickly, as everybody expected. He's gone, and he should be replaced. Maybe it's been finalized now by Antoine Comboiré, who is Antoine Comboiré is a bit like the French Sam Allardyce. So he's on the merry-go-round. You keep seeing him going from one club to the next. Good luck to the supporters of FC Nantes. They're going to have a tough season.
Right, and where does Dominic go next?
He goes back to his TV shows. He goes back to having an opinion about absolutely everything. And it's very unlikely he's going back to a managerial job in the near future. Essentially, he's a football charlatan. Well, that's the word you're using. I don't think he's a complete charlatan because he was not, because I'm somebody who is quite polite by nature. So I'm not going to use that word. I'm going to say that his stature and his status within the game, or his stature within the game, is perhaps not as high as he would like it to believe, as he would like it to be, and that there is quite a large distance, if not a chasm, between the way he sees himself and the way other people see him as a manager. Very politely put, Philippe. As ever, merci beaucoup. De rien. That's Philippe Auclair giving us some insight into what's going on in French football at the moment, and that AVB story at Marseille is fairly remarkable stuff too. Right, it is 6 minutes past 9. We're going to bring you Keith Wood and Niamh Briggs at 9:30. TV with Sue before that. Up next this morning on OTB AM, we're counting down to Cheltenham with Thom Malone.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB Sports in your pocket. Listen to OTB Sports Radio 24/7.
Until that habit is broken, do you not realise how crazy those things were?
Watch your favourite OTB videos.
The benefit of being suspended, me and Scholesy were out every night, a couple of nights before the game.
Read all the latest sports news and opinions, all in one place, the OTB Sports app. Listen, watch, read. Wherever you are, we're always with you. The OTB Sports app, available to download now from your app store.
Calling all builders, joiners, plasterers and dryliners. Need advice on the right materials for the job? Consider it done. You need them on site and in your hand. Consider it done. You want access to over 10,000 products from the leading construction brands without having to start up the van. Consider it done. There's another way of doing things. eTag. We talk with you to solve your problem and deliver what you need directly onto site. No second guessing, no seconds wasted. Click etag.ie.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
8 minutes past 9. Thom Malone, good morning to you. How are you?
Hey, Ger, how are you? You well?
Yeah, so the Cheltenham countdown last weekend, very important in terms of what we think we know, what we thought we knew but were wrong about, and some other horses as well. The Dublin Racing Festival. I want to start by talking about Honeysuckle. Sitting there watching Honeysuckle and watching Rachel Blackmore hit the front very early on, you're like, oh, geez, this is a bit early. And then just absolutely crushing the field. It felt like this is one of those kind of moments where you're watching absolute greatness decimate quality. Now, I don't know enough about all of the other horses that were in the race, but it felt a little bit like Mo Farah running everybody into the ground. What a miracle that was. And various other, Usain Bolt thrashing the field. It's like, wow, this is something we should take note of and remember.
Absolutely. And from a sort of time analysis point of view as well, the race was actually phenomenal. At the race's website, hire a guy called Simon Rowlands, who does really detailed time analysis of races, and what you saw was backed up by the clock, basically. The way she took it up so far out, and actually the fractions she set from their home were actually phenomenal. Look, Honeysuckle's an unbelievable mare. It's kind of difficult. You could probably still categorise her slightly in the sort of unappreciated context, just because maybe last year she was unfancied when she beat Benny Didier in the Mare's Hurdle, and people were kind of trying to make excuses for Benny Didier because she got to do a brilliant run up the inside. But I mean, at the weekend, she's now gone and she's favourite for the Champion Hurdle on the back of that. You know, she won fair and square. She beat a quality field. You know, even your friend Sharjah, I could see he was in trouble a long way out. He just was never travelling with the same level of fluency that he did over Christmas. Yes, the going is slightly slower, but that injection of pace he talked about quite early on. First of all, because she pushed the accelerator so early, she kind of caught the rest of the field off guard. So you think, oh, well, maybe they have time to recover. But the fact that she was actually able to maintain that pace on Honeysuckle pretty much the whole way to the line as the sectional times backed up shows you that it was an incredible performance. And I know she's a deserved favourite for the Champion Hurdle, and you'd very much hope that she does go down the Champion Hurdle route. Again, it is worth bearing in mind she's a mare, so she gets a £7 allowance with the likes of Abacadabra and San Juan and all those. Now, she will meet Epatante, last year's winner, who is also a mare on level weights, but there's every advantage. And obviously Epatante has been sort of uninspiring so far this season. So a deserved winner, unbeaten, kind of incredible. A lot of people sort of thought that isn't even her trip. Her trip is probably 2.5 miles, and maybe right-handed are ideal conditions. But yeah, that was a phenomenal performance.
Okay, so you do expect Honeysuckle to end up in the Champion Hurdle, and at this stage, at this remove, when we're talking the morning of that, you'll be like, yeah, I think Honeysuckle's going to beat Epatante.
I definitely think Honeysuckle's going to beat Epatante. I kind of don't. She's a big, powerful mare now. Like Epatante is still much more kind of a traditional filly, if you know what I mean. She's kind of small and slight and fast and light. But Epatante or Honeysuckle rather, is much more of a powerhouse. And even those pictures of her when she was sold as a 3-year-old, and she looked enormous then. So yeah, and I think even in the interview with Henry de Bromhead, he spoke about her and her personality and how she's really grown up, and she's an absolute nightmare to handle around the place, and she walks around the place like she owns it, and she'd take the head off you if you looked at her sideways in the stable. So she has that kind of real fighter attitude as well, which is a real positive in a racehorse. Yeah,
couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people as well. All the trainer and jockey around Honeysuckle as well. So it looks like we're watching something special. Tune in now to the Honeysuckle story. Get on board the bandwagon in advance of Cheltenham is my advice on that one. Let's talk about Kemboy. What was the crack there?
Kemboy put in a brilliant performance in the Paddy Power Gold Cup, as it's now known, and normally a horse wins that race, and if you're in the press, the bookies reps will come back in, they'll be handing you slips. Oh, we've cut him for the Gold Cup, blah blah blah. And Willie Mullins afterwards goes, well, he doesn't like Cheltenham, which stacks up because he's finished fourth, fifth, unseated, and 7th in his 4 runs at Cheltenham. So he's going to sell them to the Stayers Hurdle, which seems a strange decision from like a dual Grade 1 winner over fences over 3 miles at Leopardstown. So that's what Willie Mullins says he's going to do. But really it would seem that Kemboy loves Leopardstown. And just that 3 miles there, the trip at Cheltenham is an extra 2 furlongs, and that makes a massive difference. And probably the race will have left a slight mark in him. And of course, Willie Mullins has Alboon Photo to try and win the Gold Cup with anyway. But yeah, Kemboy was excellent. One of the stories of the race might be slightly the disappointments, as was noted post-race. I mean, Minetto never really looked comfortable and was beaten about 3 out. Delta Work, similar story, although Gordon Elliott said the ground might have been a little bit quick for him. That kind of suggested they're starting to run out of excuses somewhat with Delta Work. Frustrating for me, having mentioned he could sort of be one last week, but I mean, on that performance, and again, excuses are racking up slightly for Delta Work. The other brilliant performance in that race was undoubtedly the storyteller, who continues to put in brilliant performances. He picked up 2nd, so he's now won a Grade 1 at Down Royal, finished 2nd over hurdles in a Grade 1 at Christmas, and now finished 2nd in a Grade 1 over fences over 3 miles at Christmas. So he's been brilliant for the Gordon Elliott yard and uber consistent all year, unlike many of his stablemates. But I would say, by the way, on Malone, who Paul Townend chose to ride, I think he has a brilliant chance at Punchestown over 3 miles. That just looks made for him. Although he's probably, you'd imagine he's going to run in the Ryanair, but I'll be very excited about seeing him allowed to bowl along at Punchestown in their Gold Cup.
Later on in April. Native River, what's the crack with Native River after the weekend?
Oh, well, we had a rescheduled Cotswold Chase, which went at Sandown, and obviously Native River, slightly forgotten horse, Gold Cup winner from pre-Alberto era. He was a winner 3 years ago. He does seem to prefer soft going. Had seemed to lose his way slightly, but he bounced back into contention. He beat Bristol, Demai, fair and square, and Santini was third. So he's probably brought himself into the Gold Cup picture. You'd have to think that you would need very soft going for him to come into that picture. And look, at a double figure price, yes, you can say he's been there, done that. He should be in the picture, but it's definitely one where you'll have to know what the going is going to be like. And it'd want to be no good in the going description, soft and worse, really. You'd have to think for him to figure in a Gold Cup, but he's done it before.
So it sounds a little bit, Tom, like the advice was if you're on already on something on the basis of what you thought was going to happen at the Dublin Racing Festival, fair play, but wait now to get involved in any of these races until the week of the race, because there's not much there's not much benefit in being on the side of a horse right now if you've no idea what the going is actually going to be like that week.
Yeah, well, especially a horse like Native River, you just think he's far more effective on a softer surface. Like when we spoke about the novice chases a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about Shishkin before Energumene had gone and dotted up in the Irish Arkle. And at that stage, Shishkin was sort of an even money 10 to 11 shot. Energumene was, 6, 7, 8 to 1 in places. And it's now, you can get 7 to 2 about Shishkin. You can get big old prices about Shishkin, and Energumene is into 2 to 1 and is into 2 to 1 and 5 to 2. So they're almost nearly in joint favourites in places. So it's like I say, a couple of weeks ago, these markets kind of made a mug of us. We were looking at, well, how on earth would you get Shishkin beaten? And now Energumene has come out and done that in the Irish Arkle, put up a similar kind of time rating, time form to what Shakin Poursois did over course and distance on the same day, and he's absolutely blown that division wide open. So yeah, it's these trials, and as has been said, the Dublin Racing Festival in a very short space of time has become, the festival in the run up to Cheltenham.
Yeah, obviously different this year because we didn't see any of the English horses really making the effort to come over, who are going to be renewing rivalries at Cheltenham subsequently. So it's hard for us to get exactly how well the Irish horses are doing versus the English horses, and it's going to be, I think there's going to be a lot of mystery that week at Cheltenham.
Yeah, absolutely, and kind of Dan Skelton, he used to work for Paul Nicholls, now a trainer in his own right. He's come out and he's kicked the hornet's nest a little bit, suggesting that Irish trainers are not really putting it up Willie Mullins, and Willie Mullins just gets freebies at these Irish tracks and it's all easy going. So there's certainly become a little bit of an edge. Nicky Henderson said he was scared of what he saw at the weekend as well. So again, we're coming into this very much blind because there's been so little cross-channel activity from either side. Where you can sort of think of maybe Duffelcoat as the kind of horse that might have a little bit of form to go either way. But again, he ran at Cheltenham back in, I think, September, October time. So none of the top class horses from either side of the Irish Sea have clashed pretty much since before Christmas. So yeah, it makes for a fascinating clash of form lines, and it's all very much it's all very parochial, even more parochial than usual.
Well, sure, look, how bad. We didn't get into or took time to get the novice hurdle picture. We'll do that properly in some detail next week, because obviously the Dublin Racing Festival looms large, rightly so, over all of the pre-Cheltenham talk at the moment. Tom, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks, Ger.
Tom Malone giving us thoughts every Thursday morning in the build-up to Cheltenham here on OTB AM. Our guest on Friday Night Racing tomorrow on all of our OTB channels from 3 o'clock is Simon Torrance, who rode a double at the Dublin Racing Festival. We'll talk to him about how his season's been going and how he ended up where he is at the moment. Our GAA poll result: County first, 34%, Club 66%. I guess, Owen, if you ask people what they want, they're going to tell you what is best for them. Whether or not this is actually what happened, whether or not the club goes before the inter-county, I think you made a very good point about how much easier it is to manage the inter-county season than it is the club season. It's not what the traditional the traditionalists within the GAA will want, but it might be the only thing we're allowed to do while we try and get to the point where most of the country is vaccinated.
Yeah, like I do think it works nicely having the club season first. I think it makes sense if there's like a long layoff that everybody can actually play ball, and that's great. But maybe just in practice, if there's still going to be something of a lockdown, and there's going to be football and hurling played, chances are it's going to be intercounty. You can't make a case for all the club players being elite at this point. The first step is probably getting GAA intercounty into elite status again, and then the club comes after. And I can't see it working the other way around, unfortunately. As great as last season was, and it was great even from the intercounty perspective, watching the intercounty players playing week in, week out for the club and seeing who might actually make the county squad on the fringes and all that. It makes sense. And it's something that they should look at for every single year. And it was a brilliant club season, possibly the best I can ever remember. And like that may still happen. It might just be a little bit later this year.
Yeah, and look, I think everybody should just take a big deep breath and go, we're experimenting with loads of stuff. We're trying our best to get through. We're trying not to be the source of community transmission. And if we can do all that, then at the end of this, we're going to have a bunch of information about how short the season should be, how we can split the season in future, what the structure should be, what the funding should be. Like, they're the conversations that I think if I was running a sports organisation, I'd be having now, and I'd be making people think about, and I'd be just illuminating those opportunities to have those conversations, as opposed to this kind of fairly constant cutthroat battle where we're pitting club versus county and you know, GAA people against GAA people, which doesn't really make that much sense in the long run. But look, we're going to have those debates anyway. 0879 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us. It is 21 minutes past 9. Time for us to turn our attention to our TV picks. Sue Murphy is here with us. Sue, good morning to you.
Hi, how are you?
So every week we're getting people to talk about stuff that you should be watching this week, some stuff that you should go back and watch, and updates on what everybody here is watching. Where are we starting, Sue? What to watch?
I'm going to start with News of the World. So this is the new Netflix film. It's a Universal Pictures actually, but it's starring Tom Hanks, and it's a Paul Greengrass film. I think anyone who's into Paul Greengrass will be kind of a bit astonished by this, because he directed the Bourne films, directed Captain Phillips. He's usually an action movie director. He really likes long tracking shots that go on for a long time. And there's some of them in this, but there's certainly not the level of action that you would have seen. He's excellent at tension. And there's a couple of moments in this film where you're like, I actually had to secretly fast forward a tiny bit of it because I was so tense. There's a very good shootout scene at the start, and it kind of revolves around Tom Hanks, who goes from town to town reading the news to people just after the American Civil War. And he comes across this little girl who is basically being orphaned twice over. And he decides he's going to take her home. And it's a very Western, slow-moving type of film, but I actually really enjoyed it. It's just a nice film. It's not something that's good. Like, I'm really shocked by some of the reviews that are talking about how amazing it is. I don't think it's life-altering, but I think it's something that Tom Hanks probably wanted to do. He wanted to do a Western. And I think it's probably something that Paul Greengrass is like, great, if I could do a Western, I get the greatest actor in the world. And the girl in it, her name is Helena Zengel. She is brilliant, because a lot of the films she can't actually speak. She speaks in Native Indian, she speaks in German, Cyclitz German, because that's the two families that she's been orphaned by. So their relationship is all through signs and actions, and him trying to explain to her about where he's bringing her, and it's emotional. I think a lot of people are like this, but not as life-changing as I was expecting it to be.
Okay, so decent, worth a watch.
Decent. Definitely worth a watch. And I have to say, like, some of the shots of it, you know, when you watch like a Western, you're like, why would anyone want to live out there in the middle of nowhere? A lot of these shots are so beautiful. You're like, oh, that is absolutely stunning. Like, his tracking shots and the camera work is just beautiful. But definitely worth a watch, but not as brilliant as I was expecting it to be.
I think that the last thing anybody wants at the moment is to watch something that actually resembles our current environment, like the escapism that comes with actually being shown a Western, or something that takes us to somewhere that's not our current locality, is actually really important, and living vicariously through whatever people are doing in film. So the further away from home, the better, basically.
Yeah, and I'm always amazed at the challenges that filmmakers are kind of getting over at the moment with, you know, smaller casts and smaller budgets and editing processes that are taking so long because of restrictions. Like it's like we were talking about Malcolm and Marie last week, that was fully made in lockdown. Like it's amazing what they're doing, but yeah, you're totally right. It's escapist, totally escapist.
I did see somebody giving out Old Man Shouting a Cloud about the bickering in Malcolm and Marie. I was like, yep, not watching that. No, thanks.
There's a brilliant video going around actually of a guy who's pretended to be their neighbour. And he's like looking out and he's just like, oh my God, they're still arguing. He's still out in the back garden. He's still shouting at her. What is going on? It's very, very funny.
To be honest, right, I turned on the news round last night and the lads were talking about Jordan Spieth. I went inside, talked to my kids for about 10 minutes, watched a bit of After School Hub, came back in and they were still banging on about Jordan Spieth. And I was like, these two... This is Joe and Nathan. These two.
Oh yeah.
These two are essentially that Netflix program, except instead of arguing, they just sing these love songs to each other about Jordan Spieth, and I was like, they're still talking about it.
I think like that's what the way they've been for years, but you're totally right.
On the radio, get a podcast, lads. Get a podcast. That was.
They have one.
Wow.
We stupidly gave them one.
Firefly Lane is next.
Oh, this is pure crap. I can't. I feel like I needed to tell you about this because it's become some sort of a weird addiction. It's so bad, but yet so addictive.
What is it?
And it's pure crap. It's 10 episodes. It's kind of based on a book about two best friends and their relationship over about 30 years. And it starts when they're 14. And the first episode is pretty sad because one of them suffers a horrendous sexual attack. And then they kind of have this bond because of it, because she tells the other girl about it and they didn't never tell anyone about it again. And over 30 years, that kind of has been the formation of their relationship and everything that's happened afterwards. But Tully is played by Katherine Heigl, and then her friend is Kate, and she's played by Sarah Chalk, who is from Scrubs. And they've really managed to make Sarah Chalk look absolutely awful. Like she's so stressed being a mother and being at home, and you were the main love interest in Scrubs. But anyway, it's just there's a bombshell at the end of the second episode that I didn't see coming at all, and then I just couldn't stop watching it. But it's real bubblegum. Like there's nothing brilliant happening in it. They just keep like giving you crumbs, and then you're like, okay, I'll have to go along with this. And I just like every person I've spoke to knows what it is and is what, like Tommy Rooney is watching this. Like it's exceptionally bad in a lot of ways, but really, like, I feel like I needed to tell you because I feel like it's a really bad addiction that I need to get over. But I guarantee you a lot of people are watching this.
Are you saying don't watch it, stay away from it? It's like don't take up smoking. There's going to be a little bit of a head rush the first time you have a cigarette every day, but it's really bad for you in the long run.
It's really bad for you in the long run. And they've put it like front and center. It's trending #1 in Ireland on Netflix, right? And they put it front and center whenever you log into Netflix. So you're like, okay, look, sure, like I have a look if it's trending #1, and then you're like, I can't stop. Please take this away from me. It's like it's not great.
Are we all 100% convinced that the algorithm is actually what's trending as opposed to what they want to push on us? Are we?
Yeah.
Is that certified by the Stokes Kennedy Crowley? Have a man sitting there going, yeah, 0 1 0 0 0. Oh, hang on a second. What?
They're very clever. It's very clever because it gets me every time. Because as well as that, when you come onto these slots and you talk about TV, you kind of want to know what other people are watching. So if you see something that says #1 in Ireland, you're like, oh, I'm going to have to watch that because obviously a lot of people are watching that. And then it's just a really bad, like I feel like I need some sort of counselling after every episode. I'm like, this is so bad, why can't I stop?
Bad in bad TV or bad and hard to watch?
It's just, like bad TV is even a stretch. It's just not great.
Okay.
Like it's not hard to watch. It's real bubblegum. It's real escapism. And I think a lot of people will like it because, there is actually like a couple of lines in it. Like one of the lines that she says to Kate's daughter is, don't speak about her like that. She was kind of 14 and nobody's kind of 14. And I was like, oh, that's actually kind of a nice line. And then you're on to the next scene, you're like, oh, we're back to the rubbish again. So there is some nice like flash moments. But I just feel like a lot of people are going to be watching this going, why can't I stop?
Okay, stop is the just stop. Go back and watch. You want to recommend Fleabag, which is currently, I think, on RTE television at the moment as well.
Obsessed. Like I watched Fleabag. I didn't actually watch it the first time it was on BBC. I watched it on Prime just before it got released on RT. It's on RT now and on the RT player. But the first episode, I didn't like her. I didn't like her at all. And so she breaks the fourth wall and she speaks to the audience. And she's kind of trying to be really funny and kind of mischievous. And, but you can tell something else going on in the background. But she is heartbroken, is the real story. And it's beautifully written. It's like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, you never get her character name is Fleabag. You never get her actual name. And it's her relationship with her sister, her relationship with her best friend who has passed away. That's not giving anything away. That's given away in the first episode. And it really is like punch you in the stomach at moment, brilliant. And then really, really funny at other parts. Like there's times when I watch Fleabag and I'm like, oh my God, I think if she was my sister, if I had her in my life, I would go absolutely demented because she's just a wild card. She just goes off and does all these things and says what she thinks all the time. But at the same time, the acting, like Olivia Coleman, I made Owen watch this last night and he loved the first episode. Like it's just such good TV.
So good. And like I think that the more successful Olivia Coleman has become, the better all her previous roles have gotten, in my view. I was saying to Sue yesterday, I want to do a special on Number Wang and Olivia Coleman being a contestant on Number Wang in the Mitchell and Webb look, because that's better than her Oscar. That's better than Queen Elizabeth II. That is her crowning glory, pardon the pun, in my opinion, of her entire career. But it's on RT player at the moment. Fleabag, so good.
Grand. It's grand. Good. I'm not on board the Fleabag train. It's grand. We started it, couldn't watch 3 or 4 episodes, have not gone back. Might go back at some point, give it another go. But like, I did not see the mass hysteria that there was about Fleabag being the greatest thing that's ever happened. It was grand. It was like passable.
What do you think? It's the best thing that's ever happened? Like,
and they are. You go back and you check the hype around Fleabag. It was like literally. This is life-changing TV. This is TV-changing TV that's happening. And I think a lot of the stuff that comes out of London is like, oh my God, The Guardian has anointed this thing as the greatest thing ever. You must watch it. And then you watch and you go, I mean, I could say the Emperor has no clothes here, but then I would look like a Luddite in front of all the Guardianistas. And so people don't say it.
It's very, very good.
Felt that. It is very good.
Okay, you guys like it.
No, but I felt that way about it as well because she really annoyed me when it got to the end of the first episode. I was like, I can't watch her anymore. That is awful. And then by the time because it's 2 series and that's it, she's never going to do anything again with this character. By the time you get to the end of that last episode, you're like, oh God, that is.
I will reserve judgment. So far, I think it's grand, and I wouldn't blame anybody for dropping out. But you guys say stick with it. Owen's watched one episode. Is obviously clearly easily led. We've been told no spoilers, please, about It's a Sin. It's only new. People haven't caught up yet, which is fair enough. No spoilers. Look. It's called It's a Sin. It's about the AIDS crisis in the 80s and 90s, and so just prepare yourself for trauma and tragedy, and like you should be prepared for trauma and tragedy because it's an awful time in human history, and yet this TV I found that absolutely brilliant TV.
Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And I texted Owen about that. Like, me and Owen just seem to talk about TV and nothing else. But yeah, I texted Owen last night when I watched the last episode and said I actually just need counselling after that. But the one thing I did say was I turned around to my husband and said that is a really special programme. It is so well written. The characters are just so lovely and heartwarming and adorable. And you have this lovely heartwarming thing that's happening on one side and then the absolute tragedy on the other. And it's just really like that last episode absolutely killed me. And I'm not giving anything away about the last episode, but there is an amazing tracking shot with Keely Hawes when she's walking from room to room in a hospital that is absolutely exceptional. She's such a good actress. I just loved it. Just love this entire series.
For people who haven't seen it, the character Colin has become like an international sensation, and everybody he's more beloved than Connell was in Normal People last year. He is the 2021 version of that. So everybody around the world will just fall at this guy's altar. I mean, this is the main character in this, and it's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. 5 episodes, so watchable. And also, I'd never seen Ollie Alexander in anything as an actor. And he's pretty good. I know it was his first love, wasn't it? But I would certainly came to him as a musician first before being an actor. And he's a bloody good actor. So possibly the most talented 30-year-old in the UK at the moment.
Yeah, like the cast for this is just. Do you know what was really disappointing about it? I found out afterwards that they wrote more than 5 episodes for this. I think it was originally done as 8 or something, and then they brought it down. And I was like, no, those characters are just so well written. You would easily spend more time with them.
Yeah, they definitely, they definitely ellipsed out a couple of years. I would have been happy to spend more time with them. But look, maybe that's the mark of a good quality stuff. Michael O'Brien says, good morning, guys. I have a TV recommendation for you. The Deuce. David Simon is an absolute hidden gem. Set in 1970s New York, and it feels so authentic, just like The Wire. The AIDS crisis also features very heavily in The Deuce. It's about the birth of the pornography industry and the gentrification of Times Square in New York, and it's set over a bunch of maybe 2 decades. It has a really cheesy ending, I think, which doesn't do it justice, but it's absolutely well worked, and it's the type of quality writing that you'd expect from David Simon too. But absolutely, if you haven't seen It's a Sin, make it your weekend viewing this week. I think that's totally fair. Do it first before you do Fleabag. That would be mine.
All of it's up on all 4, actually, because I think the last episode is only on TV on the 19th of February.
Right.
So, but you can get all the episodes now.
And all 4 is available on the Sky platform as well. That's it from our TV review this week. Nothing else?
No, that's everything. I'll bring you more next week.
All right. Good stuff, Sue. And Owen, thanks for that. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Let me tell you about what's on tomorrow with Adrian and Owen. A brilliant show lined up. Rugby with Alan Quinlan, Philippe Saint-André and Freddie Burns, Billy's brother, who has his own moment of infamy. He's going to join us all live on the show tomorrow. We'll also chat with Louise Galvin. We'll bring you the AM cold cuts. And there's the crappy quiz. Quick reminder, the Six Nations show is live across Off the Ball from 10:30 today. Right now, Keith Wood and Niamh Briggs previewing Ireland-France this Sunday. Enjoy.
That's an interesting observation you make on Sexton being too deep, because at his quintessential best, Keith, you imagine him taking the ball very much to the line.
Well, I do. Look, it's hard. There's a huge amount of conversations around Johnny Sexton, and I know we've I think we've got a bit of a recording on that, and we'll listen to that in a while. But and an awful lot of that chat is in my view irresponsible, and it shouldn't be spoken about in that manner. And there was an interesting element. There was parts of that were taken up, and I read that article by the French doctor, and actually so much of what he said was really good. But it was just personalising it to Johnny Sexton was, I thought, wholly and entirely inappropriate. But the idea of playing on the line, and maybe we didn't do it because we were down to 14 men. Maybe we wanted to just make certain we could move the chess pieces around the field. But I just feel we're a better team when we attack the line more. And I do feel that we haven't been doing that for a while, and it shows often. Now, we talked about this last week, but it shows often the importance that we play on Johnny Sexton, on the doubt that we have over who the successor is, over and we have a lot of out-halves in Ireland at the present moment and time, but like, it's an injury away. Like, Johnny may not play this weekend, or he may play this weekend. You know, whatever they decide is right. But if he doesn't, who are the guys that we have there, and how much do we trust them?
Sure, but say he does for a second. It's interesting you're saying Johnny Sexton is playing too deep, and I'm saying Johnny Sexton in his heyday took the ball to the line. He demanded the attention of a defensive line. So I guess the burning question is, why do you think Johnny Sexton is playing too deep in 21?
Yeah, I know where you're going with that, Joe, and it's a fair comment. It's because he gets clashed and tackled heavily all the time, because that's what happens to tens.
So a degree of self-preservation maybe at his age.
I think there's an element of that and how we've played for a long while. So we haven't played for the last maybe 3 or 4 years where he takes it to the line. I think he has gone back a bit in terms of going back depth-wise. For me, he's too far back.
Okay.
So I don't think he needs to be taking it on the gain line. I don't think he needs to be opening himself up to get smashed every single time. Though I do think you do need to do that because it keeps the defences honest. And that's one of the hard ones. We're talking about a really, really hard physical game. But for me, I felt we were too far back.
Niamh, do you want to come in on all that?
Yeah, I wonder, is it not the fact that it's self-preservation, but is it lack of pace? You know, is he can't really get through that gap anymore. You know, if the gap is open, I don't think. I think, is it a case of chipping the ball to 12 or 13 as quickly as possible. So he's there then to marshal the next phase, as opposed to him getting through and, you know, then there's nobody else stepping up type of a conundrum. Maybe it is self-preservation, but I just feel with all the injuries he's had, you lose. And as you get older, naturally, you just lose a little bit of pace. Obviously, Keith didn't ever lose any pace.
I retired young, that's why.
No, but I do wonder, is it a case that he doesn't go to the line anymore because he can't get through that gap? So is it somebody else? And that can all be solved by a winger coming off the line and going through the gap for him. But we're so used to box kicking, they just stay out on the wing. Does that make sense? They stay wide. They don't offer anything like, I don't know what they call it now, but an old ghost line is what we used to call it, where you'd have a winger coming inside or outside 10 or 12. So then it sits that defence down and it will open more of a gap for the 10 or the 12 or the winger themselves. But we're so used to the structure that I don't think we play to our strengths.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. The defining moment of the game then, the sending off, Keith, it's been talked about a lot, so I don't think we need to dwell on it overly. Everybody agrees it was a red card. Owen Doyle, for instance, former test referee, former director of referees at the RFU, in the Irish Times, described the O'Mahony tackle as, quote, an act of thuggery, which was a way of putting it. 3-week ban. Is 3-week ban about right for that?
It's funny, it's not funny, but it's 3 weeks or 6 weeks. It's 3 meaningful matches.
Yeah.
That seems to have changed in the last period of time. Look, I was watching it at home like everybody else is these days, and I only caught it out of the corner of my eye, and I said, yeah, that's trouble. And it's just the nature of it. And so in terms of the control that you need to have to go into it, look, I think he gave away a couple of penalties at the start. He really wanted to make an impact on the game. And I think that's what it is. That's what it comes down to. It's that drive that you want to get in there. But that's where the game is trying to change. You know, the game is trying to change to where there's a higher level of control and entry going into rucks, and that rucks are pretty much on your feet and not off your feet, or not into heads or areas where people can get hurt. So look, it was a red card all day long, and it put the team under huge pressure. And look, as we said it, I think we responded mostly well, but we also kicked away the ball. That's one negative I didn't say at the start. We kept kicking the ball away. And it's fine if you kick it and you get it back, or it's fine if you're kicking for position to put it into different places, but it's very hard to defend all the time. I don't mind kicking from our half. I don't mind kicking from our 22, boxing it to the halfway line to start it again, to move it up the field. I really don't. I think it's part of the game. I just hate kicking it when you get close to the 22.
Why do we do that?
I don't know. If you do kick it, it has to be in a position to where it should be on the ground, so you can't be popping it up in the air because it's an easy mark. It has to be a ball that bounces or is kicked so that it bounces awkwardly, or it has to be a cross kick where one of your players is going to catch it. There has to be a really good chance and something exposed that you're kicking it to, so that there's a really good chance of scoring. It can't be used because we're running out of numbers. You know, we need to have a bit of a reset, and at times we didn't. So, look, I'm still looking at this with Andy Farrell. I'm still looking at it with our coaching setup. I'm still seeing that there's been changes. There hasn't been a huge amount of time, and that sounds, people get kind of angry when you say things like that. But they're still new to what they're trying to do, I just think I actually thought the sending off just took the wind out of our sails, and almost entirely, because then you are in survival mode. So we talked again last week about momentum, and our momentum is just tough because we've got a French team who are running at 1,000,000 miles an hour with some of the best players in the world presently playing in that side, and they look on fire. So that's where pressure builds, and you can be guaranteed that the pressure is on everybody at the present moment in time.
Niamh, the ill-discipline point. In 2017, Ireland averaged 17 penalties a game. In 2018, 7 penalties a game. In 2019, 7 penalties a game. Last year we jumped to 10 per game, and against Wales we gave away 11. I know certainly the Tadhg-Berwin one was regarded as very harsh. That's going to happen. But are you seeing us now as a team that give away a few soft penalties most games?
No, I think Keith made a really valid point there that the sending off just put everybody in survival mode. And I think when you're in survival mode and you're exerting that amount of energy defending, you're going to make mistakes and slip off things. I think, you know, of those 11 penalties, 3 of them came before the sending off. So that's something. Keith Earl's one was, you know, just an absolute mismatch in terms of he just got his running lines wrong to try and regather a box kick, and obviously the Tadhg-Berwin one. So, you know, the general rule of thumb is when you get to double figures in international rugby, you know, you're going to struggle to win the game because you just can't do that. And I think Ireland paid the price for it. But I don't know, are we a team that's losing discipline, if that makes any sense? I thought some of them were a little bit harsh, and also when you're in that survival mode and you're like 60, 70 minutes into the game and, you know, Wales are putting pressure on and you're finding it really hard to gain any sort of momentum or getting any quick ball around the corner, it's very difficult.
It is. I mean, there are certain points in this game where Robbie Henshaw's in the scrum and Johnny Sexton's playing at 12 and Billy Burns at 10, and you don't know where half the other people are, and you just have to say there is a degree of survival about the whole thing as well. On to Sexton then, and this story which has been brewing now for a couple of days. Dr. Jean-Francois Sherman, he was the neurologist who treated Sexton back in 2014 when Sexton was advised to take 12 weeks off, and he was on Parisian radio yesterday. I mean, this has all happened quite quickly. As you said, Keith, he was talking expansively and said lots of very worthwhile, interesting things, but naturally enough, what made the headlines was, I think Johnny Sexton has had around 30 concussions across his entire career. And naturally enough, Johnny Sexton asked about that at the press conference this afternoon. Have a listen.
Yeah, I'm pretty saddened and shocked by the inaccurate reports that were thrown out yesterday, I think it was. We've been here before, Michael, and it's very frustrating. And you know, for me, I just think it's totally inappropriate that a doctor that I have seen many years ago now felt it was appropriate to come out and talk to whoever it was and say those things. It's inaccurate and highly inappropriate, and yeah, I'm pretty disappointed. But for me, I'm so used to it that it's almost like water off a duck's back to me. But for my wife and mum and stuff like that, it's very very upsetting. But that's the world we live in, and I don't really want to talk too much more about it. Like I said, it was inaccurate, and just got to focus on this week and the return to play. If I don't pass one of those stages, I won't play. If I do pass them, well, then I'll be fit to play, and whether I play or not is down to the coaches then, and that's the way we've always done it. And I trust the medicals guys here. They look after us incredibly well, and I will continue to trust them. I thought there was a patient-doctor confidentiality. I'm pretty sure that exists in the world, and I just can't get over the fact that someone thought it was appropriate to just come out of nowhere and just start saying things that weren't even accurate. That's the most hurtful thing. So, look, like I said, Sinead, I've made a statement. Released a statement, and that's all I have to say on the matter. We've been here before, and we could sit here talking about it for 20 minutes. You know what I mean? But I'm never going to win out of it, because last time I did it, this happened twice before, and I tried to give facts and defend myself, and then I'm in the papers for being selfish and not looking after the younger players coming through the system, and people accusing me of just looking after myself. So I can't win. So I'm just not I'm not talking about it for the rest of the press conference, if that's okay. And I just want to focus on France, or you can talk about Wales. You know, and I mean that with the greatest respect to you guys, but that's the way it is.
Thoughts on that, Niamh?
Yeah, look, it must be incredibly frustrating for him. I think it's something that's probably followed him for a long time now, and you can sense his frustration and his disappointment. He was probably so out of line by that doctor and neurologist. I don't even know where to begin with it, to be honest. But for him, I think he had a really unlucky knock of Tipurick's knee, and sometimes, rightly or wrongly, sometimes you can get one of them and have no symptoms. So 100% medical team took him straight off. There was not even a HIA. I think that's what he was given out about coming off the pitch. He probably felt like he could have kept going, but for his safety and for everything else, you just got to take him off. And then if he's got no symptoms, he can start to return to play the next day. And obviously that's what seemed to have happened. But you'd normally say outrageously out of line by that doctor, and I just don't see the need for it.
Well, I think he realised, because he's come out again today, Dr. Sherman, and he has said, regarding my interview in Sexton, I did not want to talk about 30 concussions, but instead concussions and sub-concussions. And if you ask most rugby players, they'll tell you they have suffered numerous concussions in their career, which are hardly ever declared. For Sexton, we can therefore absolutely not speak of 30 concussions. I should not have cited this figure without any explanation. I regret the damage I've done to the player who was my patient and whom I respect more than anything. I was reading, Keith, an interview Sexton gave in January 2018, and he estimated he'd had 2 or 3 concussions across his career. Certainly not 30 anyway. I understand the point about sub-concussions, but that certainly wasn't the headline last night when it first arose.
No, it wasn't, and that's one of the issues that happen with media. There's comment and counter-comment, and the whole thing can run out of all levels of control. I think Johnny's response, and I listened to that earlier today, I thought his response was incredibly measured and correct. I also thought the Irish medics on Sunday, Johnny didn't want to go off, and they took him off. And you could see he was obviously angry with it, and with that idea, because he said, I'm fine, but they look at it and they make the call. So I think they've behaved incredibly well in that instance. And the reason that a lot of the article from the French doctor was I thought really well made yesterday was because he talked about the fact that and he talked about Johnny having incredibly high cognitive scores always. So that if there is a test that you go through and you pass the test, who are you then to say that you shouldn't play? So if Johnny goes through all the protocols this week and he's fine to play on Sunday, then he's fine to play under, that's what they are. Whether those protocols are right or wrong is up to another level of interpretation, but that's far beyond our conversation here. But he didn't feel he was in bad shape. He has passed whatever tests he's had to pass so far, and he continued to do so. That is the baseline under which rugby deals with concussion at this present moment in time. And what are you supposed to do? So everything else is just speculation. So I feel really heavily for him. I like the idea of a doctor talking about throwing out a figure like that without any merit is very disturbing. The fact that he's backtracked today, I think there are always ramifications for comments like that, and there is the ramification of patient doctor confidentiality. So look, I can understand why he'd be so pissed off, to be honest, and he should be. But I actually think he behaved incredibly well in that press conference, because you could hear the weariness in it. And we often forget this sort of stuff, and we were criticising, saying he was being a bit too deep, and are we kind of playing with one hand, playing with the other? We're not. We often forget the fact that we're here to comment on the game as we see it, and that'll suit some people and won't suit some people. But when things become personalised, which I'm not a big fan of, it's your family that it hurts. And that was one of the elements always for me near the end of my career with my mother, that she would feel nearly every blow that I would get. It becomes part of it, and you forget about the human component to this.
Well, Sexton said today he was due another test after the press conference this afternoon, and then another one tomorrow. There are various stages, obviously, along the route back to playing. Incidentally, Dr. Sherman, in the end today, came out to bat for Sexton. He was saying he's followed over 1,500 concussed athletes. The most important factors, he said, are you have concussions close together, the fact that the last concussion took a long time to go away, i.e. several weeks, or if the player is under 20 because there's a serious risk of second impact syndrome. Clearly, if Sexton hasn't had a concussion for over a year, if he's been asymptomatic for 48 hours, if the tests are good and the recovery protocol have gone well, there's no issue to his playing against France. So from yesterday saying he absolutely should not play against France, he's U-turned quite severely there. I don't know. Look, I mean, the knock was severe. It didn't look good. It's not pretty. But, I mean, I have no access to Johnny Sexton's health records, nor would I be able to interpret them if I did. It did occur to me before all this blew up, Keith, that maybe, you know, there was an argument. It was a bad old bang. Take him out for a week. And the benefit is he's fresh and good to go for Scotland and England games. It is a big opportunity for somebody to start at 10 in a big pressurised match. And thirdly, you know, slightly cynically maybe, but if Andy Farrell loses, he's got an excuse of sorts, or certainly a mitigating circumstance. You know, we're trying to blood a new number 10 now. Andy Farrell and all the team, they want to win the match no matter what against France, so they're not going to leave Sexton out if he's able to play.
No, and it's strangely, look, I think you can make changes to the Irish team over the Six Nations. I have no issue with that. And if we're not going to be winning it, and people, you know, the money people will say, well, the further up the tree you are, the more money you get, and that's very important at the present moment in time. I would start Johnny on this weekend if he's fit to start. But I definitely would, because I think he's our best 10. I'd like him to play a bit flatter. That's what I would be looking for. But I would be looking to chop and change for the remaining matches, because they're not of the same level. Now, obviously the English one is, but giving some real meaningful time to somebody, be it Burns, be it Harry Byrne, who I know Trico and Raj were talking about. I haven't seen enough of him. It's very hard to pick guys from, they're not obscurity, but they're not playing week in, week out for their province. He has skill and he's got composure. I'd love to see him during this Six Nations, because we have to start playing these guys. Other countries are doing it. We're just taking our time to do it. And if we, like, let's take the example. If Johnny is out this weekend, what are we doing then? Like, who are we picking? Who is the next guy and the guy after? And
the answer is.
Well, I'll tell you, once you've given Burns the first cut at it, I think you give him the second cut at it, and because he needs to grow into this. There's not one player that has played international rugby that hasn't cocked up in the first 5 or 10 caps that they've played. It's how they react to those mistakes is what makes them into a better player and makes them into a proper player.
And do you see enough in Burns, based on the limited amount we've seen, I appreciate thus far, but do you see enough in Burns to say, let's back this guy and invest in this guy, because we're running out of games to invest?
Yeah, we are actually. I actually think he's a decent player. I think he makes the back line operate better. He's got very good hands. He does attack the line an awful lot more. He's not as good a goal kicker. There's issues with all of these things, and you never really know until they get there. But I don't think you just put somebody in and say, okay, we're putting him in, but he didn't do that well, so let's put somebody else in instead. Yeah. That's not the way it works. You need time in that jersey to try and figure it out. And look, I mentioned Roger earlier on. Ronan O'Gara made so many mistakes at the start of his career. It is the mark of why he was a brilliant 10, was how he was able to deal with that over a long career. Mm-hmm. So we seem to not want to have that situation anymore. We're looking for the finished article to start at day one. And that does happen from time to time. We saw it with Cameron Redpath. On his first day, he played like a guy with 40 or 50 caps. Now, he may have a tough time the next time he'll be factored in. But look, I think you have to give guys a chance at different times. Maybe not for the French game, but when we go to play Italy, I would like to see. I'd love to see Harry Byrne get a run. I haven't seen enough of him. I also think Kieran Frawley is an incredibly calm guy. He's been mostly playing 12, but he's big, strong, robust, well able to play. These are guys who have capacity, but we're not getting to see them often enough.
Niamh, just to throw something at you, Rory O'Connor made this point in the paper the other day, and it's quite stark when you read it. So in 2015, when Ian Madigan started the World Cup quarter-final against Argentina, that was his 6th ever start for Ireland. His previous games were against USA, Canada, Georgia, Scotland, Romania. 4 years later, 2019, Jack Carty against Japan in the World Cup. That was his second start for Ireland. The previous game was a World Cup warm-up. Now, Carberry was injured. There was the Paddy Jackson situation. But still, that's where we found ourselves. And as we head towards 2023, I understand what Keith's saying about Billy Burns. Listening to most people who've seen Harry Byrne, Brian O'Driscoll the other night, for instance, they are of the opinion this is the one. You know, that we can give Burns more chances, we can give Jack Carty another go, there's Ross Byrne, but they're all of the opinion Harry Byrne is the one. So if they're right, if they are right, then we're headed towards World Cup 2023. Harry Byrne will have just turned 24 years old. At this trajectory, I would think he'll be lucky to have 10 starts under his belt, the way we're going. We really need to think about this. Now, maybe Joe Carberry recovers, and that's the ace up our sleeve. But at the moment, as we're headed now, Harry Byrne will be in the World Cup in 2023, probably have risen to the point of being best of the rest, and he'll have less than 10 starts, and he'll be in a World Cup quarter-final, and we'll be having the same conversation, unless something changes pretty dramatically.
Yeah, look, why doesn't he start week in, week out for Leinster? You know, he's a young guy himself, Ben Healy, Jack Crowley, all these young, exciting 10s that are coming up. You know, the last 3 starting 10s for the under-20s, and yet they don't feature week in, week out in big games for their provinces. Is that a directive from the RFU maybe that they need to be playing more games? Is it the coaches in their provinces feel like they're not ready? So if they're not ready to start week in, week out, then how can they be ready to...
On Harry, again, luck comes into it. He got injured in the warm-up before Northampton when he was starting at the RDS, and then obviously we lost 2 rounds due to COVID in January. So you wonder behind the scenes, were they really planning to get him involved and then slingshot him into Six Nations?
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razor.